American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 651, Does Padraic really have 7 or 8 children, or is he single? Dad, is immortality a curse? Raven whispered to Peter, one day, will you also watch me leave? Because you will stay here forever, and I will keep growing until I grow old. She suddenly thought of a novel she had read before. 2 people in the novel took the immortality potion, but they fell into deep loneliness and torture because of it. A person named Ruan was lost in a long period of loneliness and even crossed the bottom line of eating people, while the other person named Baron adhered to the bottom line but also experienced great psychological torture. No, Raven, for some people, immortality is a curse, but for some people it is not. The reason for the curse is that many people cannot bear the loneliness and endless waiting brought by immortality, but for me, as long as you are by my side, I will not be lonely and waiting. Raven listened to Peter's words, and her expression on her face was a little sad. But you will leave me eventually, right? Dad, time will separate us. Of course not. Raven has the 3 palaces demons sealed in her body, and she will not age like ordinary people. Peter suspected that even if she died one day, Raven could still be reborn through reincarnation. Well, although I believe what you said, Dad, I am also afraid, Dad, that one day one of us will have to watch the other disappear, Raven said with some melancholy. I have never thought about how a person with a lifespan of 1 year will spend his life. If my lifespan is only 1 year, I might spend it on the farm with you, Dad. Peter touched his daughter's hair and fell into silence. On the other side, Bomb, Wei, and Mark said goodbye to Nerzo. Several people could clearly see that Nerzo had aged a lot, and many wrinkles appeared on the face of the mantis. Bomb said to Nerzo with a heavy heart, I hope you are still alive when we see you next time, Nerzo. Nerzo nodded and said to Bomb optimistically, I will try my best. Mark thought about it and took out his gift. He took out a large box of exquisite horseshoe-shaped chocolates purchased from the Hogwarts world and gave it to Nerzo. This was originally a gift he planned to prepare for himself at the birthday party. I know this is chocolate, the favorite gift for children in your world, right? Nerzo took the gift and said in a good mood, if you gave me this gift a few days ago, I think I would be happier. After all, I haven't grown up a few days ago. Mark, are you deliberately trying to make people depressed? He felt even worse after the other party said that. New York. Debbie Grayson drove the car into the courtyard. As soon as she got out of the car with her bag, she saw a car parked outside. A handsome middle-aged man in a suit and tie got out of the car and greeted Debbie with a glass of red wine in his hand. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Paul. Debbie greeted her colleague in surprise. She didn't expect to see her colleague here. What's the matter, Paul? Debbie approached him and asked. This is a gift from my colleagues in the office. It represents everyone's thoughts. Paul handed the red wine to her. Debbie took the red wine and asked him in confusion, red wine? Do you want to celebrate the sale of my house? Paul said a little embarrassedly, it's not like that. We all know that you had a hard time before, but we are glad you're back. After Debbie returned to work, Paul and her colleagues thought she had walked out of the haze before. Thank you, Paul. After hearing this, Debbie was stunned for a moment and thanked Paul, and gently hugged him. Thank you for your concern, you're welcome. I'm actually very happy to see you come back. I still have some things to deal with. I have to go. Paul, with an unnatural expression, coughed and said goodbye to Debbie. Goodbye, thank you for your thoughts. Debbie waved goodbye to the other party. After seeing her colleagues off, Debbie pushed open the door and walked into the room. Throwing her shoes on the floor, Debbie walked to the wine cabinet with the red wine, opened the cabinet and prepared to take out the glass from it to taste the red wine. The glass door of the backyard was pushed open, and several figures rushed in. Hey, Mom, Mark Grayson waved and greeted Debbie. Mark, seeing her son suddenly appear, Debbie was stunned and almost dropped the cup in her hand. Putting down the cup and red wine, she came over excitedly and hugged Mark. Oh my God, it's been a month. You haven't shown up for a month. You worried me to death. As soon as she saw her son, Debbie talked non-stop. I tried not to worry, but even Cecil was going crazy. He was. As she said that, she quickly realized that something was wrong. It seems that there are other people in the room. Turning her eyes to the other people who entered the room, her eyes met with Peter. Peter was holding a purple-skinned baby, and his expression was calm. Greeting the Asian beauty in front of him, who looked to be in her 30s and still had charm. "Hello, Ms. Grayson." Debbie, slightly stunned, she looked down at her bare feet and immediately rushed to the door as fast as possible to put on her shoes. While putting on her shoes, she glared at Mark. She had brought a stranger into her home without saying hello in advance, which made her look so embarrassed. "Hello." After putting on her shoes, Debbie pretended to greet Peter as if nothing had happened, and then asked Mark, "Mark, is this your friend?" "No," Mark Grayson quickly denied. "Mr. Patrick is the one who saved me. He is a superhero who is more powerful than me. I am Peter Patrick." Peter came over and introduced himself to Mark's mother. After arriving on Earth, Peter was dragged by Mark to his home. Raven and the others were waiting for him at the hotel, so he would appear at Mark's house now. "I am Debbie Grayson, Mark's mother. Thank you for helping Mark." Hearing Mark say that Peter was a superhero who saved him, Debbie's impression of Peter was much better. "Is this your child? He is very cute." She quickly turned her attention to the child in Peter's arms and said to Peter with a smile. Although the baby's purple skin was a bit weird, Debbie pretended not to see it out of politeness. Mark looked at the baby and said to her, "No, Mom, this is your child." "What? Sorry, I said it wrong, Mom. This is Dad's child." Debbie looked at him with wide eyes. "What did you say? My child? When did I have a child this big? I mean, he is the child of Dad and another woman." Hearing this, Debbie felt dizzy. The whole world seemed to be turning upside down in front of her. She was about to fall backwards because her body could not support her. Mark, who was quick-eyed and quick-handed, quickly supported her. "Mom." Half an hour later, Debbie, who had recovered, sat at the table, pressed her forehead with her hand, and said in a collapse, "This morning, I didn't even know if Nolan was still alive. I didn't even know if I still wanted him to be alive." Debbie looked at Mark Grayson with dissatisfaction. "Now you tell me that he turned another planet into ruins, and now he is sitting in my kitchen with other children." As she said that, she glanced at the little boy who was playing with a baseball glove in the kitchen. Then she turned her eyes to Peter, who was standing in front of the window, with his arms folded on his chest, looking at the scenery outside the window, and lowered her voice to Mark and said, "What are you thinking? Why did you bring that child back?" "Sorry, Mom, I didn't have a choice." Mark Grayson apologized to his mother. "No, of course you did. Just like your father, he didn't have to go to that planet, and he certainly didn't have to find a new partner and have a child." Lowering her head and covering her aching temple, Debbie said helplessly, "He will never be responsible for the lives he destroyed, and will only leave a mess for others to deal with." Again and again, "I know." Mark Grayson understood his mother's hatred for his biological father. Debbie rubbed her head for a while, then looked up and said to Mark Grayson, "What should we do with him? Children of this age need constant care, and he doesn't even have a name." Mark glanced at the little boy in the kitchen and said, "He is growing very fast, and he will probably be out of the baby form soon. Maybe I can take a year off to take care of him." "No, of course you can't take a year off. Absolutely not." Debbie immediately stopped Mark from wanting to take a year off. "If you take a year off, how will you explain to Cecil? There must be a way, Mom." Debbie hesitated for a moment and said, "Forget it. Maybe I can take a few days off to take care of him. By the way," she glanced at Peter, who had been listening, and asked Mark in a low voice, "You just said that Mr. Patrick has 8 or 9 children. He must have some experience in taking care of babies. Maybe we can." Before his mother finished speaking, Mark Grayson interrupted her. "No, this is our business. We can't trouble others." Debbie asked Mark curiously, "Does Patrick really have 8 or 9 children and is still single?" "Yes, Mom, although I don't know the situation." As soon as he finished speaking, his phone suddenly received a message. He opened it and found that it was a message from the Global Guard. "What's wrong?" Debbie saw Mark's serious expression and asked him. "There are dangerous people, and the Global Guard is recruiting members." Chapter 652 Atomic Girl Eve. "What is the Global Guard?" Clark asked Raven curiously. Several people were watching TV in the hotel to learn about the world. Clark asked Raven after hearing the name Global Guard on TV. "A superhero team composed of superheroes, including Red Speed, Darkwing, Aquarius, War Girl, etc." Raven told him the information she had found. As for their abilities, they are basically equivalent to the Flash, Batman, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman in our world, just like the Super 7 in the Black Robe world. They look like the isotopes of the Justice League, although the Justice League in our world has not been formed yet. Oh, by the way, in addition, the director of the Global Guard is Cecil. Many people say that he is a ruthless guy who will do anything to achieve his goals, just like the black director of SHIELD. When Raven said this, she complained, "Why are there so many fake Justice League groups in the parallel universe?" Clark thought for a while and said, "Maybe the Justice League is more well known, but I guess the Justice League in our world will probably have to be renamed the Padraic Farm League." Raven didn't expect Clark to have a dry sense of humor. After a pause, she continued, "Well, maybe our universe is the center of the parallel universe. Speaking of the members of the Global Guard, there is no need to have a deep understanding of the abilities of these members." "Why?" Azu walked over and asked Raven curiously. "Because they are all dead, killed by Omni-Man. The first generation was almost wiped out except Spawn. Now it's the second generation of the defense team, led by robots, with members including Atomic Girl Eve, Monster Girl and so on. The traitor in the Global Guard is Omni-Man. Omni-Man's real purpose is to control the Earth." Raven told everyone the information about the Vitrum people and Omni-Man that she knew from Peter and Mark Grayson. He lied to his son that his hometown, Vitrum, is a technologically advanced place. Everyone has superpowers of infinite strength, longevity, and the ability to fly. His people will go to other planets to help people there develop better, but, in fact, Nolan's home planet has a Nazi-like regime. People there will kill each other, eliminate the weak, and colonize everywhere in the universe, killing any race that dares to resist. Putting down the finished drink, Raven paused for a moment and continued, "Later, because there were too many colonized planets, Vitrum's power was weakened. Their policy changed from direct massacre to sending people to occupy the planet in the form of infiltration." Hearing Raven's words, Azu turned his eyes to Clark. "Why does this description seem to be talking about Clark?" "So, Clark, are you an undercover hiding among us, pretending that you have adapted to life on Earth, but in fact you are always ready to prepare your own plan to revive Krypton, want to occupy Earth, and then secretly kill the people of the Justice League one day?" Azu deliberately pretended to be suspicious and looked at Clark. Clark was silent for 2 seconds and replied, "That might be General Zod, not me." "That's not necessarily true." Loki appeared at some point and said, "Maybe Clark has been lurking on the farm, trying to seize the inheritance of the farm. Maybe one day he might kill me." Listening to Loki's nonsense, Clark suddenly remembered. In his previous dream, he really killed Loki. It seemed that he strangled Loki to death on the bridge. Then returned to Earth, dealt with Raven and Mark, and launched a rebellion against the Godfather. No, it won't. The future has changed, and he will never hurt Loki. It was just a parallel universe that he saw, and he was definitely not Omni-Man. Clark kept comforting himself in his heart. So, actually Omni-Man is a villain. Bayo, who had been watching TV on the side, came over and asked curiously. "You can say that, or you can say that the former Omni-Man was indeed a villain." After thinking for a while, Raven said to Bakugo, "But in the final battle with Mark Grayson, he did not kill Mark." Bakugo blinked and asked Raven, "Raven, why don't you say he killed Mark Grayson?" "I don't know, but my dad told me something." Exhaling, Raven thought of something Peter had told her before. That should be when Zoo played baseball when he was a kid. Dad was impatient to watch Zoo compete with other fragile Earthlings. For Dad, this was an insignificant moment in life. Anything he could do was more meaningful than watching such a boring game. Zoo's superpowers were not suspenseful compared to those of Earthlings, but Dad felt Zoo's passion for the game after Aunt Martha, Clark's mother, reminded him, and realized that it was these tiny moments of happiness that constituted the meaning of people's survival. So Dad, as a person who could throw a baseball into space, calmed down to watch the game and cheered excitedly with ordinary people. At this point, Raven said with mixed feelings, "Perhaps, Mark Grayson and Omni-Man are also like this, because of the love that still exists between father and son. Perhaps Omni-Man realized the meaning of people's survival like Dad, so the Omni-Man we see became the guy who protected the sexes later." As Raven spoke, she remembered the happiness she had when she was with her father. Although it was an insignificant happiness, it was also these tiny life experiences that constituted the meaning of her existence. She suddenly understood the meaning of the length of life to the sexes. Although the lifespan of the sexes is 1 year, even if life is so short, as long as there are these small joys that make up life, the length of life is not important. Boom. Wei and Mark listened to Raven's words and fell into a state of contemplation. Well, I'll go to the street to have a look." After listening to Raven's words, Mark, who was inspired, wanted to take a walk on the street. At the same time, in a certain experimental base, a metal safe was cut open. The man, covered with mechanical structures, used the ultra-high temperature flames ejected from his arms as a cutting knife to cut open the metal cabinet and take out the glowing energy ball from it. It seems that the robot is not hidden deep enough, the mechanical man sneered and put away the energy ball. "Hey, Killing Cannon, you chose the wrong day to come here to rob today," a voice suddenly came from behind him. The mechanical man, that is, Killing Cannon, turned around and saw the girl in a pink uniform and a miniskirt who caught his eye. "Atomic Girl Eve, it seems that I have a certain degree of fame." Atomic Girl Eve slowly walked towards him. Atomic Girl Eve, whose real name is Samantha Eve Wilkins, is also known as Atomic Eve. Her superpower is the ability to change things by reconstructing the atomic structure, which reminds people of the atom, and her ability to create with her mind is closer to Green Lantern. In addition, atomic reorganization also gives her the ability to freely change the structure and form of her body. Eve is extremely intelligent. She has a photographic memory and can remember even the content she has seen deeply. Although she is a genius, she is somewhat out of place and can only act alone. Kill Cannon obviously knows Eve. "I thought you had left that broken organization a long time ago, and I guess they have abandoned you too." Eve stopped. "A lot of things happened this week. Now, if you put the robot's things back, I will show mercy to you." "You want to take this back? Then come on." Kill Cannon put away the spherical energy body and aimed the cannon on his arm at Eve. "Son of a bitch. You made the wrong choice." Seeing that the other party was about to attack her, Atomic Eve condensed a ball of pink energy in her hands like the Scarlet Witch. Boom! The killing cannon attacked Atomic Eve, and a deafening explosion sounded. Atomic Eve dodged the attack and fired the condensed energy at the killing cannon. With a boom sound, the killing cannon was shot out of the room. After getting up, the killing cannon, regardless of the pain, immediately flew towards the nearby bridge. Atomic Eve also flew into the air and quickly chased after the other party. Bang! On the busy bridge, the killing cannon fired a shell, which was blocked by a pink shield materialized by Atomic Eve. Then she took a sudden step forward, and energy burst out from her hands, heavily bombarding the killing cannon. It is equivalent to a mixture of the abilities of the Scarlet Witch and Green Lantern, plus the ability of atomic reorganization. Atomic Eve's strength in combat is also second to none. With a bang, the body of the killing cannon fell to the ground and rolled along the ground. "What's wrong? Are you finished? Get up, our battle is not over yet." Atomic Eve, standing in the air, said to the killing cannon, "Get up, let's continue fighting." The killing cannon, who was lying on the ground, ignored the ridicule of the Atomic Girl and continued to accumulate the energy of the cannon in his hand. When Atomic Eve finished speaking, he turned around suddenly. Boom! The cannon blasted towards her fiercely. Atomic Eve instantly created a shield to resist the attack. A violent explosion sounded, and the shells that were deflected by her blasted towards the nearby cars. The cars affected by the explosion fell towards the bridge. No, Atomic Eve wanted to hold the car, but she was blown away the next second and fell to the ground. Shooting out the materialized rope, Atomic Eve fell to the ground and held the car to prevent it from falling. Then the killing cannon slowly walked towards her and kicked her to roll on the ground. "Now, tell me, who is the one who is finished?" Chapter 653. Please call me Gryffindor. Bang! Killing cannon kicked Atomic Eve's shoulder hard. Eve felt a sharp pain and couldn't hold the silk thread in her right hand. The car at the other end of the loosened silk thread hit the sea under the bridge. With a dull bang, the sound of the car falling into the sea reached her ears. Gritting her teeth, Atomic Eve turned her head and saw Killing Cannon pointing the muzzle of the cannon in her hand at her. White-hot energy was constantly accumulating at the muzzle. At the moment of Killing Cannon's attack, Atomic Eve quickly stood up and hit Killing Cannon's face with her right elbow. With a dull bang, Killing Cannon staggered. Atomic Eve took the opportunity to grab the muzzle of the opponent's arm and knocked it to the ground, and at the same time, she conjured a ball of gel to stick the muzzle of the mechanical cannon to the ground. Bang! The energy shot by Killing Cannon hit the ground. With a deafening sound, he was pushed by the recoil force towards the bridge behind him and hit it hard. After dealing with the Killing Cannon, Eve quickly flew towards the bridge, ready to rescue the car that fell into the sea. As soon as she flew to the side of the bridge, she saw the car being slowly pulled up in the sea. The elderly couple in the car were frightened and sat in the back seat of the car, not daring to move. Mark used the magic wand and the floating technique to lift the car from the sea into the air. A few minutes ago, Mark left the hotel and went out for a walk. As soon as he walked near the bridge, he saw the fight between Atomic Eve and the killing cannon. After seeing that Atomic Eve was attacked and the car fell into the sea, Mark immediately used the magic wand to release a spell to pull the car up. With a bang, the car was put on the shore by Mark using the floating technique. Eve, the atomic girl who witnessed all this, looked at Mark holding the magic wand in shock. She always felt that the guy in front of her looked familiar. "Are you the invincible young man?" Atomic Eve asked him in surprise. "No, I'm not the invincible young master, although we look a bit alike." Mark shook his head, put away his wand and said to her, "I'm Mark Padrick, you can call me that." After hesitating for a while, Mark finally told her the name he had been thinking about for a long time. "Cryfinder young master, Cryfinder, young master." Hearing such a strange name, Eve was stunned. Could it be that the invincible young master was joking with her? She looked at Mark suspiciously. The other party did look different from the invincible young master she knew. Not only was he shorter, but he also didn't seem as mature as the invincible young master. And what kind of wand did the other party use? Was he using that little wand to cast spells? "Yes, I'm the Gryffindor young master." Mark looked at the citizens gathering here and the police cars gradually coming from the periphery, and knew that he had to leave here quickly. "Sorry, I have to go." Mark wrapped his Hogwarts cashmere scarf around him and walked out quickly. Seeing Mark leaving, Atomic Girl Eve looked around, took a deep breath, flew into the sky and chased in the direction Mark left. In the deserted alley, Mark stopped and turned around under the dim street lights. In the shadow of the alley behind him, Atomic Eve slowly walked out. "You have been following me for a long time. Is there any purpose?" "Atomic Girl Eve," Mark asked the other party helplessly. He found that the other party had been following him since he left the bridge. Although he knew that the superhero called Atomic Girl Eve had no ill intentions, Mark still felt a headache. "I just want to know, are you really the Gryffindor Knight, not the Invincible Knight?" Atomic Eve looked at Mark and continued to ask him. "Of course, where's the Invincible Knight? He hasn't appeared for a month." Atomic Eve walked out of the shadows, stood opposite Mark and asked him. "He is back, and he will probably appear soon." Mark knew that Mark Grayson had returned home at this time. "Well, it seems that you two know each other and have a good relationship. Are you really not his relative?" Eve continued to ask in the form of a curious baby. Considering that Mark had just saved the couple in the car and indirectly helped her, Eve had a good impression of him and became very interested in Mark's background. "No, of course not. We just met not long ago." "Are you a local in New York?" "I came from the countryside, from Padrick Farm in Smallville, with my father." Mark saw that the other party seemed to be very curious about his background, so he asked her directly. "Your father?" "Yes, Peter Padrick, the most powerful superhero in this world." "No, the entire universe." Eve's eyebrows moved. "Is he more powerful than Omni-Man?" "Of course, my father has saved the world more than once, and he has always been the kind of person I want to be." Looking down at the time on his phone, Mark said to the other party, "Sorry, I have to go." After speaking to Eve, Mark quickly left the alley and walked outside. He was afraid that he would be scolded by his father if he returned late. Watching Mark's back as he left, Atomic Eve did not continue to chase him this time, but whispered, "Gryffindor. Peter. Padrick." Why had she never heard of these names? At the same time, Donald, the assistant director of the Global Defense Agency, a white man wearing glasses and bloated, walked nervously to the door of the data room. After looking around and confirming that no one was there, he used fingerprint verification to enter the data room. In front of the terminal computer in the data room, Donald took a deep breath to calm himself down, entered the account password and entered the internal network. In front of the video called Grayson monitoring, he clicked the access button. As a result, it prompted that the authority was insufficient. After thinking about it, he looked around with a guilty conscience, entered the name of Director Cecil, and entered the password. After opening the video and seeing the scene in the video, he was stunned. In the video, he was sitting in the office. After seeing the Almighty Man break into the door, he picked up the pistol on the table and pulled the trigger at the Almighty Man. Then the Almighty Man punched him in the chest. After staring blankly at the video, he took off his glasses and looked at his hands. "Is this still me?" Half an hour later, In the lobby of the Global Defense Agency, Cecil was standing in front of the big screen and looking at Debbie's house. Seeing Peter appear on the screen, his brows knitted tightly. The top chief of the defense agency, who was half bald, with gray hair but bright eyes, was puzzled by the stranger who appeared in the almighty man's house. Donald, who was worried, walked up to Cecil and said to him, "Sir, can we talk for a few words?" Cecil, who focused his attention on Peter on the screen, shook his head and said, "Donald, I hope you can notice that we are a little busy now." "I know, sir. I need you to squeeze out some time to deal with something." Cecil waved at him and turned to leave. Seeing Cecil's behavior, Donald gritted his teeth and became angry instantly. "Everyone, get out now." Hearing Donald's roar, everyone in the hall was stunned. "You heard me. I said get out. Everyone get out," Donald shouted like crazy, veins popping out on his face. Cecil was stunned for a moment, then winked at his men, and the people in the hall began to leave one after another. Cecil waited until everyone left, looked at him, and said, "Okay, you have successfully attracted my attention now. Tell me, Donald, what is it that makes you so impatient?" "Last year, after the Omniman rebelled, we blew up the monitoring room to stop him." "Yes." Cecil walked up to him. "You pressed the bomb switch after everyone evacuated, and you were seriously injured." Donald questioned him. "Why don't I remember it at all?" Cecil sighed, put his hand on his shoulder, and said, "You were severely burned at that time, and you were very stimulated." "Burns?" Donald sneered. "Is this the burn you are talking about?" As he said that, he suddenly tore off a piece of skin on his arm, revealing the mechanical tissue inside. "What on earth did you do to me?" Seeing the shocking wound on Donald's skin, Cecil was slightly stunned. After a while, he said to him with a complicated expression, "Come with me, in the White Room, in the laboratory with the highest authority." Cecil brought Donald to a mechanical body. "What is this?" Donald asked in shock. "This is what we do. It's more advanced and costs more. I would say this body is much better than the one you had before." How could it be? He could never have imagined that the other party would replace him with a mechanical body. "When we found you, only your brain was intact, so we replaced your body with this one." Donald asked in shock, "What am I now?" "You are you, better and stronger than before, and you are still alive." Donald felt that his spirit was greatly shocked. "Why don't I remember? They all know. Why don't I know?" Post-traumatic stress disorder is difficult to deal with. "We think it would be better if you don't remember." Donald thought Cecil was just an old bastard. "My situation will be better?" "You have no right to do that. What do you want to do?" "Donald, would you rather die? You understand our world and our responsibilities, and you don't have time to deal with existential anxiety." "Anxiety? You call this anxiety? God, Cecil, I know you are indifferent, but I didn't know you were so cold-blooded." Click. The two were arguing, and the censor door opened. The female secretary came in and stopped after seeing the two arguing. "Two officers, what's the matter?" The two turned their heads at the same time. The secretary, who was a little scared by the stare, stammered, "He's here." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 654, The Almighty Man is in danger of being cheated on. "Mark, I told you that you need to report to me as soon as you come back." In the conference room, Director Cecil said to Mark dissatisfiedly, "You have been missing for a month. Do you know what happened during this time?" "Sorry, I don't know what happened, but the first thing I will do when I come back is to see my mother." Mark Grayson shrugged his shoulders and said. Cecil pressed his aching forehead with his hand. "Mark, we agreed before. You promised that when I ask you to carry out a mission, you will obey my orders, and you can't choose when to obey the orders." Seeing Cecil's arrogant style, Mark Grayson also became dissatisfied. "Caesar, I have saved countless lives in outer space, and everything seems normal here." "Yes, everything seems normal. When you went out to play with the space bugs, the guards almost died to save the Earth." Facing Cecil's accusation, Mark was also full of anger. "Do you think I went out to play? What I did in outer space, what I discovered in outer space, are all important." Soon Mark Grayson realized something. He stopped, and a flash of realization flashed in his eyes. "You have always known, right? My experience in school, my leaving the Earth with the Sexer people, including when I came back, you have always known. You have been monitoring my whereabouts, monitoring my family in school. Cecil, with his hands in his pockets, sighed and said, in order to protect Debbie, we have been keeping a close eye on her situation. It's mainly monitoring, not intervening. Of course, some keywords may trigger closer monitoring. Listening to Cecil's words, Mark showed an unbelievable look on his face. I can't believe you installed cameras in my mother's house. It's just for her safety. Mark Grayson didn't believe his excuse for safety. I don't believe you don't have other purposes. Mark glared at the old man and turned away. I don't want to talk to you now. Since you already know everything, there's no need for us to talk. I'm going to see my girlfriend, so you'd better not send anyone to follow me. Watching Mark leave, Cecil put his hands in his pockets and said to him, I have no objection, but he quickly added, I'll send someone to pick up Nolan's child. Hearing Chief Cecil say to pick up the child, Mark immediately stopped. No, Mark stopped and looked at him unkindly. You can't do this. Cecil frowned. What are you going to do? Leave him to your mother? He is an alien. We are more capable of taking care of him. Hearing Chief Cecil say that his brother was an alien, Mark Grayson came over angrily, pointed his finger at him and said, he's my brother, not a scientific experiment. Tell your people to cancel the operation. Facing Mark Grayson's angry face, Cecil smiled faintly. No, it's impossible. They have already set off. Mark Grayson clenched his fist. Let them retreat, right away. No, I can't do it. Cecil said to him, leave your so-called brother at home. Your mother is in great danger. I have sent members of the escort team to pick up the child. Looking at the other party's stubborn face, Mark Grayson wanted to punch him. Wait, Mark soon thought of something more important. It seems that Mr. Patrick is still at home. If Mr. Patrick and the members of the escort team have a conflict, the ending must be very bad. According to the strength shown by Mr. Patrick, if the two sides fought, the members of the guard would definitely be beaten badly. No. You have to call your people back, because Mr. Patrick is still at home. Patrick, hearing this name, Cecil's brows frowned even more. You mean the person who appeared with you? Who is he? He is my father from the parallel universe, Peter Patrick. On the planet Sexa, he saved me and drove the Vitrum people away. Cecil nodded after hearing this and asked Mark Grayson, I congratulate you on having another father, but he can defeat the Vitrum people. Is his power stronger than the Omniman? Cecil was a little puzzled. How did another Omniman from a parallel world appear? I don't know, but I know that among his sons, there are some who are as powerful as my father. Mark Grayson described Peter to Cecil in his cognition. Through the dream that was entangled with another Mark, he had some understanding of the ability of this father. Most importantly, Mr. Patrick's greatest ability is not super speed and super strength, Mark Grayson said to him with some concern. Mr. Patrick, or my father in the parallel world, has the most powerful ability to control dreams. He can control everyone's dreams and reverse reality and dreams. He is the dream god who controls human dreams. Dream god. Hearing this word, Cecil opened his mouth wide and fell silent. In this world, there are still gods who control dreams? At the same time, at the Grayson family, Peter picked up the coffee and thanked Debbie. Thank you for the coffee, Ms. Grayson. Debbie smiled at Peter and said, just call me Debbie. You saved Mark, and I should be the one thanking you. As she said that, she suddenly thought of the scene where her husband sat in Peter's place and drank coffee. Are you okay, Debbie? Debbie, who was in a daze, was awakened by Peter. You look a little absent-minded and worried. Peter put down the coffee and asked her. Yes, I've been thinking about some things in the past lately. Debbie sat down and lowered her eyes. For some reason, facing Peter, she seemed to be less guarded and willing to confide in him. This makes me feel bad. Maybe I can be a listener. Peter smiled at her. But before that, we have to remove the eyes here. Eyes? What eyes? Debbie asked Peter in surprise. Eyes for observation and surveillance. Peter reached out and took out a miniature camera from under the table, and crushed it with a click. This is the eye that the Global Guard uses to monitor you. Peter put the crushed miniature camera on the table and said to her. After learning that she was being monitored, Debbie felt unbelievable at first, and then an uncontrollable anger rushed to her heart. How dare they do this? This is a complete invasion of my privacy. Debbie felt annoyed when she thought that her life for so long had been monitored by the guard and knew everything clearly. I think when I see Director Cecil, he has to explain to me that they are always unreasonable and arrogant, invading other people's privacy under the guise of protecting the safety of the earth, Debbie said angrily. After trying to calm down, she thanked Peter gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Patrick. If it weren't for you, I might never know what they did." "You're welcome. I just found it by accident. Anyway, I have to express my gratitude." Debbie suddenly thought of the red wine that Paul gave her in the morning, so she walked quickly to the cabinet, took out the red wine, and said to Peter, "This was given to me by a colleague in the morning. I wanted to taste it, but I didn't expect Mark to come suddenly. Do you mind tasting it with me?" Mr. Patrick, since the other party took the initiative to invite, Peter would naturally not refuse. But watching Debbie take the wine glass, Peter fell into deep thought. If a man and a woman are alone in a room and drink some red wine, something will happen, right? If something happens, will it be considered that he has cheated on the Almighty Man? If he really cheated on the Omni-Man, would he get a Mark II at the same time? Peter was lost in his sage's thinking. Debbie, who was sitting opposite Peter, sighed slightly. "Actually, after so many months, I still can't understand it. Is this all a lie?" She raised her head and asked Peter in confusion. Peter was silent for a moment and said to her, "I don't know what happened between you, but I think as the person involved, you should be the most clear about the pure or false love in this world. Maybe, but feelings can also be fake, or he may be pretending. I have been raising Mark almost all the time, and he rarely takes care of the family." Peter tasted the red wine and said to her, "I always thought, Debbie, that you are the strongest one. Live your life your way." Debbie raised her head, looked at Peter with surprise, and asked him, "Do you think I'm strong, Peter?" "Well, Omni-Man has superpowers and he is indestructible. That's not considered strong heart, it's just a natural talent. And you have a strong heart. You are on an equal footing with him, live together, and raise Mark in your own way. Thanks to you, people on this earth can live instead of becoming slaves, so, in a sense, I think you have a strong heart." Hearing Peter's words, Debbie was stunned at first, and then a warm current surged in her heart. Thank you for thinking of me that way, Peter. I just always lived my life the way I did, and never thought about saving the earth or anything like that." Chapter 655 Peter vs. Global Guard. In the past, Omni-Man was always fighting. Without him, you shouldered everything. Now it has just become a reality, so, you don't need him at all, right? Peter said that he was just comforting the lady who was trapped in love and helping her out of the predicament. He had no other intentions. After listening to Peter's words, Debbie fell into a state of contemplation. After a while, she exhaled, picked up the wine glass and asked Peter, "Let's talk about you, Peter. Mark said before that you have 7 or 8 children. Is it true?" "Yes, if you don't count the godchildren, I have 8 children." 8. Debbie showed a shocked expression on her face. "Your life with children must be very difficult, right?" She felt a little sympathetic to Peter. It was so difficult to raise one child by herself, wouldn't it be even more difficult for Peter to raise 8 children with superpowers? In fact, if you start to get used to this kind of life, it's not difficult at all. Peter told her his parenting experience. The important thing is to have enough patience. When you have enough patience and immerse yourself in this kind of thing, you won't find it difficult. Although he said so, Peter actually didn't have much experience in taking care of infants and young children. In the early stage, Zoo was taken care of by Martha, and Star-Lord was taken care of by Wolf Girl. Later, Loki, Raven, Mark and other father-worried people were taken care of by Persephone, Vixen and Martha McConaughey. Listening to Peter's seemingly reasonable parenting experience, Debbie felt that Peter, a single father, did a good job. She was about to speak, but Peter's expression suddenly became serious, stopped talking to her, and looked towards the door. Debbie immediately became nervous and asked him in a low voice, "What's wrong? Someone is coming, half an hour ago." Guard training base. Spawn watched the battle between the clone Kate and Monster Girl for a while, and shouted, "Stop!" Spawn, who was sturdy and somewhat similar to Butcher, said to the two, "Okay, time is up. Kate, Monster Girl, go take a shower." After hearing this, the 3 clones Kate became one person and walked towards the lounge. Monster Girl changed from beast form to little girl form and left the scene barefoot. Monster Girl's superpower is to have a monster form, which allows her to exert great strength and endurance in battle. Looking at Monster Girl's back, his friend Rudy, who is responsible for technical support, came up to Spawn and said, "Can we talk, Spawn?" Spawn crossed his arms in front of his chest and glanced at the teenager who was not even as tall as his chest. "What do you want to say?" "I want to remind you, Spawn, That every time Monster Girl transforms, she gets younger. Spawn nodded. I know the abilities of my team members, then you must understand that this kind of training is very harmful to her. I developed a simulation program, or, hearing Rudy's words, Monster Girl couldn't bear it anymore, turned around and shouted at him, "Enough, Rudy." As she said that, she walked towards him angrily. "Hey, Amanda, I noticed that the Immortal Man didn't record the number of times you transformed." Before Rudy could finish, the monster girl with pigtails who looked like a teenage girl said to him aggressively, "The number of times I transformed should not be recorded by him, and you don't have to worry about it, but logically, if there is a way to reduce the time you lose." Seeing that the other party was still chattering, the monster girl raised her heels and said to him unhappily, "We only dated once, and your desire for control has become so strong, then there will be no second date." After saying that, the monster girl turned around and walked away angrily, leaving Rudy confused. Bomb Rex, who saw this scene, came over and teased Rudy. "It seems that the 8th grade dance is cancelled." Bomb Rex is a demolition expert of the guard. He can make explosives and likes to play pranks on people. Before Rudy could fight back, the projection of Director Cecil appeared. "Everyone, we are in trouble." Hearing Cecil's words, all the members of the guard came over. In addition to Spawn, Monster Girl, Doppelganger Kate, and Bomb Rex, there are also Robot, Black Samson, and Shrinking Ray. Black Samson's ability is Amazing Strength, and he has amazing strength and endurance in battle. Shrinking Ray's ability is to shrink herself or objects. These young members of the Guardians are the second generation of superheroes recruited by Cecil after the first generation of Guardians were wiped out by Omni-Man. Compared to the first generation's counterpart DC Justice League, the second generation of Guardians are more like DC's Titan team. Invincible Young Man has returned to Earth, but he brought back an alien brother. "I hope you can bring him back." Cecil looked around at everyone and said slowly, "Just in case, Omni-Man may appear at any time and cause a conflict. I need you to bring him back." Spawn felt that Director Cecil was making a fuss. He put down his arms and said, "I can go alone." "No." Cecily shook his head. "You, Bomber Rex, Black Samson, Monster Girl, Shrinking Ray, and Clone Kate, you all act together." Rudy raised his hand. "I'll go too." "No, Rudy, you are in charge of technical work and can't participate in the battle." Spawn patted Rudy on the shoulder and said to Cecily, "Don't worry, Chief, we will bring him back soon." On the way to the mission, Bomber Rex's phone suddenly rang. He quietly picked up the phone and found that it was a call from his good friend Atomic Girl Eve. "Hey, Eve, are you okay?" "Not really, Rex, what are you doing?" "We went to Mark's house to carry out a mission." "What happened to make you feel bad?" Atomic Eve was lying on the bed, and said a little depressed, "I messed up and almost got someone hurt. If it weren't for the Gryfinder Knight who showed up, I might have killed someone. Later, I took my anger out on the killing cannon. I wanted to help, but I caused more problems. Maybe my parents are right. Who do I think I am?" Although Bomber Rex was a little surprised when the Gryfinder Knight appeared, he still whispered to comfort the other party, "Don't worry, Eve, everyone messes up. This is human nature," Shakespeare said. He lowered his voice. "Eternal Man, Black Samson, the Abominable Robot, and Rudy, they have all gotten into trouble at least once. It's not easy to have superpowers, but we just have to do our best. Even a bastard like me understands this, and I think you will understand it too. It would be stupid if you keep being depressed." Bomber Rex took a deep breath and said to her, "Eve, remember the photo you showed me? You lost your family at that time and were depressed, but you survived. Later, you tolerated me, a bastard teenager, forcing my problems on you. I also stayed in your room for 1.5 years, and fought hundreds of battles with the invincible young man." He paused, "But in all those events, you saved many lives. Every time you made this dirty, terrible, and hateful world a little better, you are an indispensable hero in this world. So, wipe your tears and tell your parents to stop complaining." Listening to his comfort, Atomic Eve smiled. "Thank you, Rex, thank you for listening to me." "You're welcome. We're here. I have to hang up the phone to carry out the mission. It seems that there is another guy named Peter Patrick here, still staying at Mark's house." After hanging up the phone, Eve frowned when she heard the name Peter Patrick. She seemed to have heard of this name. Peter Patrick, Gryfinder. Eve quickly realized that this was not the father of the Gryfinder. If Rex and his friends had a conflict with Peter Patrick, the result would be very bad. Gryfinder said that his father was the most powerful superhero in the universe. Although it was not known whether it was true, his father was definitely not a simple person. Thinking of this, Eve immediately got up from the bed. Worried that Rex would be in danger, Eve changed into the uniform of Atom Girl and rushed to Mark's house as fast as possible, Mark Grayson's house. Hearing Peter say that someone was coming, Debbie looked towards the door with some confusion. Knock. 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 After the door was knocked, the voice of Spawn came from outside the door. Ms. Grayson. Debbie heard that it was her husband's former colleague and walked over to open the door. After a few pleasantries, Spawn said his purpose and wanted to take the baby away. No. Of course not. You have no right to take him away. Debbie was just angry because the Global Guard was monitoring her, and now she saw that the other party was going to take the baby away again, and she was even more angry. I won't give the baby to any of you. Don't even think about taking him away, Debbie said as she walked towards the living room. As a result, Spawn stood in front of her, blocking her way. Sorry, Ms. Grayson, we have to take him away for your safety. At the same time, Beast Girl, Doppelganger Kate, Bomber Rex and others entered the room, ready to forcibly take the baby away. Peter didn't want to meddle in other people's business, but after seeing the helpless look Debbie gave him, he finally stood up. Sighing, Peter said to Spawn, if I'm here, I'm afraid you can't take the baby away. Spawn looked at Peter with a puzzled look. Who are you? I'm Peter Patrick. Peter stretched out his hand to him, and in the stunned eyes of everyone, with a bang, an invisible force heavily blasted Spawn out. Chapter 656, The Global Guard Team is Wiped Out? Bang! Spawn's body passed through the window glass and hit the ground outside the room. Peter's sudden attack stunned everyone in the Global Guard. Bomber Rex rubbed his eye sockets hard. He didn't even see how Peter attacked. Spawn, who fell on the road outside the room, shook his head to calm his mind. After staggering to his feet, he looked at his shoulder. He found that his shoulder had been hit and bloody. He didn't expect that he, who had unbreakable skin, would be hurt by Peter. Spawn is now the captain of the Global Guard. He has immortal vitality and can be resurrected after being killed repeatedly. This bearded superhero has served as Lancelot, a knight under King Arthur, Christopher of the Spanish Armada, and an explorer under Columbus. He also participated in the American Revolutionary War. He also became the President of the United States under the alias of Abraham Lincoln, and as a soldier in World War I, he became a superhero in the 1930s. He had the ability to be immortal and had rich experience in combat, but he didn't expect to encounter a guy who could break through his defense. Spawn had just stood up when Peter fell from the air and stood in front of him with a bang. The ground under his feet was cracked by his step. Subconsciously, Spawn punched Peter fiercely. Peter reached out to catch Spawn's attack. The attacks of the two caused the air to vibrate, and the shockwave instantly tore a hideous crack in the ground. Spawn took a few steps back and looked at Peter standing in front of him in shock. Peter glanced at him, shook his head and said, "If you fight me with this kind of combat power, Spawn, I'm afraid you can't beat me." After some testing, he roughly knew the strength of this Spawn. Although they were both superhumans, the opponent was not as fast or strong as Omni-Man. After obtaining the power of Zorn and Piltover's faith, Peter's personal strength has increased a lot. He was confident that he could suppress even Omni-Man, let alone the Spawn in front of him. As Peter's mind moved, in front of Spawn's astonished eyes, the ground suddenly rose, and a deafening boom sound resounded in the space. The block where the two stood suddenly rose from the ground and rose rapidly into the air. Debbie, Rex the Bomber, Kate the Clone, Monster Girl and others in the room felt the ground rise in incredible eyes. On the street, Spawn, who had never encountered such a situation, looked at Peter in surprise. "What did you do?" As soon as the voice fell, a thick and huge vine emerged from the ground and appeared in the air. It waved from the ground and rushed over to entangle Spawn. Boom! Spawn, who was unable to react in time, was waved by the vine and fell heavily to the ground, making a deafening sound. After the smoke and dust cleared, Peter slowly walked to Spawn, who was groaning in pain. "As you can see, if I want, I can easily destroy you," Peter said after taking a look at Spawn's broken arm. This guy's limbs are regenerated anyway, and a broken arm is not a big problem. As for the fact that he had just raised the ground, it was just an unrealistic dream created by him using the power of the ruby. The people of the all-powerful Guard and Debbie Grayson were pulled into the dream world he created. Otherwise, he was worried that if a fight broke out, not only would Mark Grayson's house be lost, but the entire neighborhood might even be destroyed. At the same time, Atomic Girl Eve rushed to Mark's house as quickly as possible because she was worried about the safety of Bomber Rex. As a result, as soon as she came in, she saw the ground under her feet rising up. At the same time, countless vines emerged from the suspended ground and completely tied up Spawn. Seeing this scene, Atomic Eve didn't know that what she was seeing was the environment created by Peter's dream, and thought that Peter had raised the ground with his own power. She showed an unbelievable expression on her face. Who is the father of Gryffindor? On the other side. Hey, the roaring Spawn broke free from the control of the vines, flew in front of Peter, raised his right hand that had begun to recover, and hit Peter fiercely. The fist broke through the air, making a whistling sound. Facing the full force of Spawn, Peter dodged backwards and then punched the opponent in the abdomen with a backhand. Feeling a sharp pain, he finally fell to the ground with a thump. No, this is impossible. Seeing this scene, Bomberman Rex's voice was trembling with shock. Seeing Spawn fall to the ground, the other members of the all-powerful guard finally reacted. The clone Kate is now the lover of the immortal. Seeing her lover injured, she shouted and rushed towards Peter. Facing the attacks of several Kates, Peter activated his super speed and knocked them to the ground one by one. Grabbing the neck of the last Kate who was still standing, Peter threw her backwards. Bang! The monster girl, who turned into a beast, jumped into the air to catch Kate. Seeing that Spawn was easily defeated, Black Samson and the elongated man also rushed towards Peter at the fastest speed. Black Samson roared and concentrated his strength on his right leg, hitting Peter hard. Peter turned around quickly and raised his hand to block, but the blow still made him step back a few steps. Peter frowned slightly, not expecting this guy to be so powerful. Then he took a step forward and stretched out his hand, instantly summoning the Meow Hammer that he hadn't used for a long time. With thunder all over the sky, Black Samson was hit by a thunder before he could dodge. Huge smoke and dust rose on the ground, and Black Samson fell to the ground and lost his fighting power instantly. After dealing with Black Samson, Peter turned around suddenly and grabbed the little man who jumped behind his head, the Stretch Man Ray. The Stretch Man tried to shrink and enter Peter's body, but was discovered by Peter at once. Grabbing the little man who was struggling in his hand, Peter said to her, "You want to surprise me? That's not easy, let him go." Bastard! The monster girl saw the Stretch Man being caught in Peter's hand, and made a painful sound, roaring and rushing towards Peter. The green monster with a huge body rushed towards Peter with its claws. As a result, before he could get close to Peter, he was blasted away by the divine energy released by his right hand. No! Seeing his teammates being annihilated, the bomber felt boundless fear and helplessness in his heart. How could these teammates of his be defeated so easily? Why did the enemy in front of him just deal with everyone in a casual manner? Driven by fear and anger, the bomber Rex rushed towards Peter and kept throwing explosives behind him. The rotating fluorescent weapon like a flying knife can cut a creature in half. And this fluorescent weapon has a strong explosive property. However, what Rex couldn't believe was that Peter actually grabbed his fluorescent weapon with his hand and crushed it. Seeing that his weapon could not cause any harm to Peter, Rex was desperate. How to deal with such an enemy? Looking up, he looked at Peter who was walking towards him step by step, and his heart was filled with more despair and fear. Bang! There was a burst of sound in the air, and Atomic Girl Eve flew in front of Bomber Rex, activated her materialization ability, and created a pink barrier in front of Peter to block Peter's footsteps. Go! Atomic Girl Eve shouted to the guards who fell to the ground, "I'll cover you, Peter. I haven't killed a member of the guard yet, right? How come I look like a supervillain?" Debbie, who was in the room on the other side, was holding a purple-skinned baby and looking at the scene outside the window with a shocked expression. At first, she didn't take it seriously when she heard Mark say that Peter was a superhero. Now seeing Peter easily defeat the entire Almighty Guard, she was completely stunned. Is the ability shown by Peter really still human? Could he be an alien from a planet like Nolan? Spawn and others staggered to their feet, looked at Atomic Girl Eve, gritted their teeth and prepared to leave. Peter originally just wanted to teach this group of ignorant guards a lesson, and he didn't think about killing them all. Now he saw Atomic Eve materializing a barrier to block him, and these guys were ready to sacrifice Atomic Eve to escape, and he immediately lost interest. He waved his hand, and the scene in front of everyone receded like a tide. Atomic Eve was shocked to find that she was standing on the street outside Mark's house. The street that had risen from the ground was now completely restored to its original state. Spawn, Rex and others looked at the suddenly restored environment with confused expressions. Debbie was the first to recover from her daze. She pushed open the door and ran to Peter, saying to him, "Peter, these members of the guards are not bad people." She thought Peter was going to kill all the guards, so she advised him, "Peter, let them go." Looking at Debbie, who was worried and pleading, and then looking at Atomic Girl Eve, who had a complicated expression, Peter said to everyone, "Don't worry, I just want to test the strength of the so-called superhero team that protects the safety of the Earth. I'm not the omnipotent man, and I won't hurt you." As he said that, Peter put the dizzy ray in his hand to the ground. When Atomic Eve heard Peter say that he was just testing their strength, she was completely speechless. Just give it a try, why make such a big fuss? The almighty guards were almost wiped out for the second time. Chapter 657 Atomic Girl Eve's Wish. At this time, Mark Grayson and director Cecil, who were rushing to the scene, finally arrived at the scene. Mark Grayson looked at the members of the Global Guard who fell to the ground. After confirming that these people were not in danger of life, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he arrived not too late. Director Cecil looked at his team members, all of whom fell to the ground except Atomic Girl Eve, and looked at Peter in astonishment. This guy actually killed all his team members. Mom, seeing Debbie standing next to Peter, Mark Grayson came over and hugged his mother. "Great, Mom, you're okay." Peter helped me, although the noise was a bit loud in the middle. Debbie looked at Peter and said to Mark Grayson with a slightly complicated mood. Mark listened to his mother calling Peter directly, and he was a little confused. When did his mother and Mr. Patrick become so familiar? On the other side, Cecil walked up to Spawn and talked to him for a few words. Hearing from Spawn that Peter almost wiped them out just now but held back in the end, Cecil showed a surprised expression on his face. There are actually heroes with such superpowers in this world. Doesn't this mean that this superhero named Peter Patrick has the power to fight against the Vitrum people like Omni-Man? No. Not only can he fight, but he may even defeat the opponent. Cecil focused his eyes on Peter, hesitated for a moment, walked in front of Peter and extended his hand to him. "Hello, Mr. Patrick, I am Cecil, the director of the Global Guard." Cecil introduced himself to Peter. "Peter Patrick." Peter extended his hand and shook hands with him. "Regarding your conflict with the members of the Global Guard, I think this should be a misunderstanding." Cecil knew from Mark Grayson that Peter was not a villain, and he also saved the people of the planet Sexa, so he should be someone who can be won over. So he took the initiative to admit that the conflict between the two sides was a misunderstanding. "I think so." Peter didn't look embarrassed at all. He looked at Bomber Rex and others and said, "If the members of the Global Guard are these superheroes, I think they still have a long way to go. Yes, because of the rebellion of Omni-Man a year ago, we had to recruit new members. They are all very young." Cecil heard the sarcasm in Peter's words. Although he was a little unhappy, he still suppressed his emotions. "Mr. Patrick, I would like to invite you to visit the Global Guard. Maybe you can give our team members some guidance." Cecil took the initiative to invite Peter to visit the Guard headquarters. If it is not necessary, he chose to try not to make enemies with Peter. On the other side, the members of the Global Guard looked at Peter, who was talking to Director Cecil with mixed feelings. Although he was not seriously injured, it was not a good feeling to be beaten up. Who is he? Why have I never heard of this guy? Is this guy stronger than Omni-Man? I was beaten away before I even got close to him. I feel like if he doesn't want to hold back, I might really die. Monster Girl covered her aching chest and looked at Atomic Girl Eve while speaking. Atomic Girl Eve shook her head. "I don't know, but I heard that he is the father of Gryffindor." "Who is Gryffindor?" Bomberman Rex felt even more dizzy. "Where did a Gryffindor come from?" Atomic Eve explained, "He is the superhero who helped me on the bridge. And he is very similar to Invincible." Atomic Eve explained and cast her eyes on Peter. "How can he change reality at will?" Late at night, after leaving Mark's house, Peter walked towards the hotel. As soon as he left the street where Mark's house was, he noticed that someone followed him. Peter turned around and looked at the hidden Atomic Girl Eve. "Come out, Atomic Girl Eve, I've seen you." After hearing Peter's voice, Atomic Eve stood out from the darkness, and at the same time complained in her heart, "They are indeed father and son." They said almost the same thing after they found out. Although she was a little scared of Peter's strength in defeating the members of the Global Guard just now, she took a deep breath and approached Peter. "Hi, Mr. Patrick." Although Eve complained about Peter, she didn't show it on her face. Instead, She said to him a little embarrassedly, "Sorry, I didn't mean to follow you, Mr. Patrick. I wanted to ask you where the Gryffindor lived." He said, "You are his father, Gryffindor." Hearing this name, Peter frowned slightly. "Who gave this name?" Soon Atomic Eve explained to Peter. He said his name is Mark Patrick. Hearing Atomic Eve say Mark's name, Peter suddenly realized, this kid gave himself such a nickname? You might as well call yourself the Hogwarts Knight. Since you are in the name of Hogwarts, why don't you dare to represent Hogwarts? Do you know him? Peter raised his eyebrows and asked Atomic Girl Eve. Yes, he helped me. Atomic Girl Eve told Peter what happened on the bridge. After hearing the other party's story, Peter was a little surprised. This kid also came to save the beauty? He remembered Atomic Girl Eve, who seemed to become Mark Grayson's wife in the future. Could it be that this kid robbed another wife of his own? Seeing that Peter seemed to be lost in thought, Eve hesitated for a moment, and finally asked Peter the question she wanted to know the answer to. Mr. Patrick, those illusory scenes, I mean the ground rising from the ground, are they real? If they are real, how did you do it? Eve thought she had met a kind of person. Her ability is atomic recombination, which can rearrange the composition of molecules at the subatomic level. She can even turn a chicken dinner into a cheeseburger. It's just that her ability cannot be used on living things because there is a mental barrier in her brain, which was added to her by Dr. Brandeworth. Because the doctor said that her ability is close to God, it must be restricted. Dr. Brandeworth was the one who created her. Dr. Brandeworth worked for the U.S. government and participated in a research project called the Superman Project. He was born from this project. However, at that time, the doctor had feelings for his mother, who was a test subject, and decided to elope with her mother and herself in her belly. Unexpectedly, when his mother gave birth to him, because his ability was too strong, he destroyed the laboratory and his mother died. After the doctor gave birth to himself by cesarean section, he gave himself to a couple to raise. Turning her thoughts to the present, Eve, who felt that her life was a bit bad, saw Peter's performance and thought that the two had the same ability, so she couldn't help but come up to confirm it. If there was someone with the same ability to communicate with her, maybe she wouldn't feel so bad. Last night, her stepfather was very angry with her daughter because she disappeared without a trace and didn't even warn them where she went. Eve didn't want to argue, but just went back to her room, locked it, and changed a family photo. Now the photo was Dr. Brandeworth and her biological mother. Eve can change the content of the photo at any time because she can manipulate it at the subatomic level. No, Atomic Girl Eve, that's not real. Peter bowed his head and said to Eve, it's just a false dream. Eve was a little frustrated when she didn't hear the answer she wanted. But she was soon attracted by curiosity and continued to ask, dream? Mr. Patrick, can you create dreams? Oh, I can see everyone's dreams, including yours. Eve, hearing Peter say that he could see her own dreams, Eve didn't believe it. I don't believe it unless you prove it to me. If you can control people's dreams, wouldn't you become a god? She didn't believe that there were gods in this world. If there were gods in the world, then the gods would definitely not allow themselves to be created. Because the doctor said that he was infinitely close to God. Hearing Eve want him to prove it for her, Peter frowned slightly. After thinking about it, a grain of sand appeared in his hand. In Eve's shocked eyes, the silver sand flew into Eve's outstretched hand. What is this? She asked Peter in surprise. It allows you to see your own dreams. My dreams? Eve said somewhat frustratedly, my dreams are probably all nightmares. My family is a nightmare. My stepfather and stepmother always think that I am not doing my job properly. They want to see me live a regular life, but I will still try. If you can really control dreams, Mr. Patrick, can you let me see my mother in my dreams? Hearing Eve's words, Peter was stunned for a moment, then nodded, of course, as long as your desire is strong enough, you will always see it. In the hotel, Tom took out a snakeskin bag. He used a space expansion spell on the snakeskin bag, and there were many items in it, including books, tents, clothes, medicines, etc. He put them all in. Putting the snakeskin bag on the table, Tom took out a petrified statue from it. The bodies of the dead Vitrum people were petrified by him using the petrification spell and put in the snakeskin bag. Tom, who has a scientific research spirit, plans to take the bodies of the Vitrum people back for research. However, considering that if he brought the bodies directly, his father would definitely punish him if he saw it, he had to turn the Vitrum people into stone statues. Staring at the stone statue, he suddenly thought of an idea. If the bodies of these Vitrum people were fed to the big snake, I wonder if the big snake will evolve? Chapter 658 Clark, because I know you, I am the luckiest Superman. After Peter entered his room in the hotel, he was about to rest when there was a knock on the door. Clark. Peter didn't expect Clark to wait for him to rest. Why aren't you resting so late? I'm not sleepy. I want to talk to you, Godfather, Clark said with a heavy heart. He wanted to say that he actually saw Peter's fight with a global guard, but after thinking about it, he didn't say it in the end. After all, he was suspected of peeping. He also accidentally saw the Godfather and Mark's mother drinking red wine. If he said it, he didn't know if the petty Godfather would be angry. What do you want to talk about, Clark? Is it about you, or about Omniman? Peter didn't know that Clark was thinking about him and Debbie drinking red wine at this time. He walked to the window, looked at the city skyline outside, and asked Clark. He knew that Clark was a little concerned about Omniman's potential rebellion. For this superhero who was similar to himself, Clark suspected that he might become someone like Omniman. Or in other words, Omniman made him see a part of his own shadow. After all, Clark had been in Zatanna's House of Mystery before, and saw himself betraying the Earth, killing Loki, beating Raven and Mark, and rebelling against himself. Clark looked at Peter's back and asked him hesitantly, Godfather, tell me, why did Omni-Man change his mind in the end and didn't kill Mark? After hearing Clark's words, Peter was silent for a moment, turned around and said to him, you know what? Clark, each of us has a period when we grow up and find that our father is not perfect, and may even be shameful. Then we will argue, quarrel and even break up with our father. Then we will re-recognize the many aspects of our father and finally decide our own understanding of our father. Clark said to him, that's not necessarily the case, Godfather. I haven't experienced this stage. That means you are mature enough, or you haven't reached that stage yet. Peter continued, Omni-Man is a very complicated person. On the one hand, he is indeed not like you. He is very identified with and loyal to his people, but on the other hand, forming a family on Earth, especially the process of raising a son, did give him different feelings. When he heard that his son had awakened superpowers, his expression was very complicated. Matt's superpowers came too late, and he was not ready. I think he often even wondered if Mark would have a completely different life if he never awakened superpowers. Peter stared at the night outside, was silent for a moment, and continued, because once the invincible youngster awakened his superpowers, he had to start educating him to be a Vitrum, and that meant knowing the true mission of their race, which meant that he had to start conquering the Earth. So on the night Matt said invincible, he went to kill the Global Defense Force. Listening to Peter's words, Clark fell into deep thought. He thought about his own situation. If his parents were such people, he might not be able to become Superman, and he could not become the kind of person that the Godfather wanted him to be. The Omni-Man actually inherited Superman, that is, Clark, the entanglement between two races and two worlds, but the two of you are obviously different. Even after there is no turning back, you can still feel that he is hesitating from time to time whether to let his son become a Vitrum. If you can feel this entanglement, you can understand why he was broken by the sentence you, Dad, and I still have you. Clark's expression was slightly moved when he heard Peter say you, Dad, and I still have you. He moved his lips, wanting to say that it was his luckiest thing to have parents and a godfather in his journey of growth. He would never betray his godfather, and would not hurt his godfather even if he died. Peter didn't know what Clark was thinking at this moment. He sighed slightly, turned around and faced Clark, looking into his eyes. After countless entanglements, the love for his son finally overwhelmed the all-powerful man's obsession and entanglement with his own race, his home planet, and his past identity. So, in the end, it was love that changed him. If one day, Clark, you become the kind of person you fear, I believe that as long as there is love, you can find yourself. After comforting Clark, Peter continued, and I also believe that no matter what his father becomes, the invincible young man always regards him as his father, and always believes that the father who has spent 18 years of his life with him is the love that finally turned the scale in his father's heart. After listening to Peter's words, Clark exhaled slightly, walked to Peter's side, and looked out with him, and said to him with a complicated expression, so, in the end, it's still love, I think. Godfather, you said that the Superman I become will be the most powerful superhero. But I think that if it is just the physique and life code of Kryptonians, it cannot make me the most powerful superhero, just like the other me in the world of injustice. If there is no love, and the heart is full of hatred and fear, then the so-called Superman is just an ordinary superpower. Peter heard this and looked at Clark in surprise. This kid now realizes the meaning of idealistic Superman. Indeed, Superman is strong not only because of his physique, but also because of his belief. In the future, Superman broke the six-dimensional universe with one punch, destroyed the multiverse, and condensed all the power behind the punch, relying on the awakened love and pursuit of justice in his heart. He remembered that Clark went to the six-dimensional universe to seek help in the future in order to stop the conspiracy of the dark goddess Perpetua. But he was soon locked in a confined space without the sun. Because there was no star and sun to replenish energy, Clark became skinny and almost died. Just when he was about to be overwhelmed by despair, he heard the voice of Batman, thought of his father and children, and saw the sun. This made Clark stand up again. After his rebirth, he flew towards the World Forger and threw the most powerful punch, knocking the World Forger away and blowing up the multiverse he created. Peter, who knew that as long as Clark believed in love and justice, he would be the most powerful being in the world, had been trying to lead him to the path of justice, instilling some positive energy in him, teaching him how to control his power and understand and sympathize with humans who were weaker than him. Although he was not a good person himself, he still suppressed some dark thoughts in his heart, hoping that his actions and words would not teach Clark bad things. In this way, he would not destroy the Superman who had infinite possibilities and firmly believed in his faith and pursuit of justice. Godfather, Clark turned around and smiled at Peter. I think it is my greatest luck to meet you. In countless parallel universes, countless Clarks, only I met you. I am the luckiest Clark. Well, I am also the luckiest Peter Patrick. Peter put his hand on Clark's shoulder and said to him with emotion. Boom. Clark was immersed in this situation as if he had returned to his childhood, sitting in front of the fireplace and talking face to face with his godfather, opening his heart to communicate his emotions, when suddenly a violent explosion sounded outside. An explosion suddenly occurred on the street in the distance, and smoke and dust quickly spread. What is that? Clark looked over and saw countless octopus tentacles attacking the building from all directions. The guy in the center of the octopus tentacles was a man in a space suit. Countless octopus tentacles surged out of the other person's body, constantly bombarding the nearby buildings and people. I'll stop him, Clark greeted Peter, took off his glasses, took off his shirt, revealing the Superman uniform with the S logo on his chest, and immediately flew to the scene. Peter, when did you secretly change into the Superman uniform inside? He said that he didn't want to be Superman now, but his body was very honest and secretly changed into the Superman uniform inside. On the other side, Raven, Zoo, Star-Lord, Mark, Boom, V, Tom and others also woke up from their rooms after hearing the sound. When Boom came out of the hotel, he saw a sea of pink octopuses rushing towards him. V, who was standing next to her, saw the woman screaming and rushing over being attacked by the pink octopus tentacles. Without hesitation, she rushed up and hugged the woman, while pressing the switch of the fist glove on her arm. V roared and blocked the woman behind her, while swinging her fist to smash the tentacles. The sticky liquid splashed all over V. Smelling the foul-smelling liquid, V continued to run forward and save the people who ran to the hotel. Clark, who was dealing with the octopus tentacles, shot out hot vision in his eyes and cut off all the tentacles that attacked him. Clark flew to the astronaut in the middle at super speed. Unexpectedly, the octopus tentacles were more agile, dodging Clark's attack, and countless octopus soft substances emerged to surround Clark. Facing the sticky pink ocean that surged up to entangle him, Clark's body turned into a flash of lightning, blasting away the sticky ocean that approached, and then flew into the air, shooting heat rays at the astronaut in the middle of the pink tentacles. The tentacles around the astronaut, whose eyes were emitting red light, were swept away in an instant. Whoosh flew over, and Clark picked up the unconscious opponent. Standing in midair, Clark looked down and saw the scene in front of him, with a look of shock on his face. No, several citizens appeared on the street, their eyes all turned blood red, and their bodies were obviously controlled by the octopus, and countless pink substances surged out of their bodies. Chapter 659, Martian Parasite, Eve's Dream. Half an hour ago. Global Defense Force Base. The members of the Guard were looking at the alien spaceship projected in the sky. This place is full of unknown creatures. The spaceship heading towards the city is obviously an enemy from Mars. Director Cecil looked at the members of the Guard with a complicated expression. The member who had just joined the Guard, the shapeshifter Smith, scratched his hair, coughed and said to everyone, I said I was a human from Earth before, I lied. Everyone should be mentally prepared for what I will say next. Seeing that Smith seemed to want to confess something, Black Samson looked at him unhappily. We all know that you are a Martian, Smith. Do you think we will let you join the guard without investigating your background? Hearing Black Samson say that he knew he was a Martian, Smith was stunned. You all know it, of course. Director Cecil looked at him and said, we just don't know the purpose of your coming to Earth and how you got to Earth. Okay, seeing that Director Cecil knew his identity, Smith no longer concealed it. He said to everyone, I was born a Martian. On the distant Mars, like all Martians, we used octopus dogs as servants because they could not penetrate our deformable skin. They loved to try to penetrate our skin and they could parasitize our brains. At this point, Smith's face showed a trace of nostalgia. When I was a child, I hated living underground. I yearned for the outside world and I wanted to see the stars. So when the opportunity came to me, I grabbed him, knocked out your astronaut, and then pretended to be him and came to Earth. After I came to Earth, I was influenced by you. I wanted to do good things and I got to know all of you. Smith was talking about the previous U.S. government's Mars landing plan. A few years ago, the U.S. government sent astronauts to Mars. Wait, the monster girl interrupted him soon. What did you do with the astronaut? Smith showed a trace of embarrassment when he heard the monster girl's question. My people were following behind at the time, and I thought they would find him before the octopus dog. Cecil looked at the huge spaceship and said to Smith, but your people didn't find him. Some other things, the octopus dog found him before your people and parasitized him, right? Smith shook his head. I don't know, but given the current situation, maybe. Maybe, the octopus dog really found him, and then parasitized him, and he might have become the host of the terrifying and strange octopus dog hive brain. I'm sorry, I really didn't know that this would happen. In other words, now you don't know how many species of this creature are coming to the Earth. Cecil walked towards Smith, and the real astronaut Joss Livingston has been possessed by the octopus dog, and they have the ability to possess millions of humans, and it's all your fault. Seeing Cecil's bad expression, Smith quickly explained, sorry. I didn't mean to do it, or it was not my intention. Although I am a Martian, I will stand on the side of the Earthlings. I have never thought of hurting everyone. In other words, you left a NASA astronaut to die on Mars, right? Spawn came over and grabbed his clothes. Is that what you did? Seeing that Spawn seemed to want to attack Smith, Cecil came up to stop him. Okay, Spawn, we'll settle the score with him later. Now Transformer Smith is the only one who knows about it. And we still need him for the time being. Now, thousands of octopus dogs are riding on spaceships and will soon launch an attack on our city. We have to stop them. Spawn, Elongated Man, Monster Girl, Black Samson, Bomber Rex, and Transformer Smith, you all act together. Director Cecil hesitated and asked Spawn, you were injured when you fought Peter Patrick before. Can you still hold on? Spawn nodded, of course no problem, it's just that my arm was broken, and it's recovered now. Bomber Rex raised his hand and said to Director Cecil, we have missed a very important helper, Atomic Girl Eve. At this time, Atomic Girl Eve, who as mentioned by Bomber Rex, had fallen asleep holding the sand given to her by Peter. In her dream, Eve found herself in a laboratory. Dr. Brandeis, whom she had met before, was talking to her mother. She was very sure that the lady with a big belly was her mother. She had seen her biological mother in a photo. She was excited and slowly walked to her mother and the doctor. I don't know what my child will be like in the future. The mother stroked her belly and said to Dr. Brandeis, I just hope she will be a kind person who can bring some changes to the world. She will definitely become a great person who changes the world. Dr. Brandeis came over and unlocked the electronic lock on the mother, but you shouldn't lie like this. You are not a test subject to be studied. You will also have your own future. Dr. Brandeis pulled Eve's mother out. I will take you away from here. Seeing Dr. Brandeis taking her away from the base, Eve's mother's face was full of shock. No. You can't. I will hurt you. She knew that as the person in charge of the experimental research, Dr. Brandeis would definitely end up miserably if he took her away from here. This is my choice. I will not let you continue to be studied here as a test subject. You will give birth to your child and have a wonderful life. As he said this, he was ready to take Eve's mother away from here. But soon Eve's mother felt unwell. She fell to the ground holding her stomach in pain. Dr. Brandeis saw her painful expression and realized that the baby in her body might be about to be born. No. Hold on. Dr. Brandevis wanted to help her to the bed, but he didn't expect that the items in the room seemed to be controlled by an invisible force and fell to the ground in pieces. Invisible energy burst out from Eve's mother's stomach and hit the instruments in the room, making a deafening explosion. Smoke and dust quickly filled the laboratory, and the energy that exploded rushed Dr. Brandevis, who was unprepared, out. When everything calmed down, Dr. Brandevis staggered to his feet and looked at Eve's mother, and found that she had fallen in a pool of blood. No, no, no. Dr. Brandevis hugged Eve's mother painfully and cried out. My child. Take care of her. Eve's mother, who was already on her deathbed, spoke softly to the doctor. The doctor lowered his head and saw Eve's mother, who had lost her breath, in his arms. He gritted his teeth and picked her up and put her on the bed. He decided to perform a cesarean section to take out the baby in the mother's belly. As a bystander of the dream, Eve couldn't help crying when she saw this scene. She had heard Dr. Brandevis tell this story before, and she had dreamed countless times that a birth had killed her mother. But she had never experienced such a real dream. It was as if these were real bloody scenes happening in front of her. Mom, Eve, with tears in her eyes, stretched out her hand to her mother lying in a pool of blood. But the next second, the scene in front of her suddenly changed. The laboratory hit by the explosion, the mother in the pool of blood, and Dr. Brandevis crying, everything disappeared, and she turned into a familiar bedroom without warmth. Wiping away the tears from the corners of her eyes, Eve sat up and found that the silver grain of sand slowly floated into the air. Eve's eyes were fixed on the floating sand. Finally, the sand fell on the photo frame on the table. In the faint silver glow, Eve seemed to see her mother in the photo, smiling at herself. Eve walked to the table and gently took the photo frame in her hand. She wiped the photo frame with her finger, and as her ability, changing the composition of matter at the subatomic level, was activated, the mother in the photo, who was calm, turned into a smiling face in the dream. Eve, who suddenly felt relieved, exhaled deeply. Thank you, Mom, for giving me life. I won't let you down. Eve held the photo frame in her arms and whispered softly. Hey, Eve, the sudden voice outside the window scared Eve. She quickly put away the photo frame and looked outside, and saw the bomber Rex appearing outside the window. Rex, sorry to bother you again, we are in trouble now. The octopus dog has arrived on Earth using a spaceship. Once the parasite spreads, it will infect and parasite thousands of people. We must stop them, Rex said to her. The escort team has set off. They need you, Eve. Eve was stunned for a moment, nodded and said, I'll change my clothes and go there right away. When Rex and the atomic girl Eve felt the spaceship landing, the octopus dog had already started to attack the city. The members of the guard team and Mark Grayson had already started fighting with the octopus dog. On the other side, Clark was holding the unconscious astronaut and looking at the parasitized people below in shock. Unexpectedly, a small octopus dog emerged from the astronaut's brain and pounced on Clark. Facing the sudden attack of the octopus dog, Clark reacted quickly and grabbed it. The pink octopus dog with an external brain in his hand kept squirming and trying to get into his skin. Chapter 660. It's over. Riven is parasitized. What kind of monster is this? Zoo flew to Clark and asked him. It's a disgusting parasite, the octopus dog. Be careful not to let it get into your skin, otherwise it will definitely make you miserable. Spawn and the members of the Global Guard have arrived. Seeing Clark and Zoo flying in the air, they were slightly surprised for a moment and said to Zoo. He thought that the sudden appearance of Peter Patrick was enough to give him a headache, but he didn't expect that there would be a superhero with seemingly good abilities. Octopus dog. After taking a look at the pink ocean tide formed by countless octopus dogs, Zoo said disdainfully, they can't get into my skin if they want. Flying into the air, Zoo's eyes shot out heat. The heat rays that emitted scorching heat hit the ocean formed by the army of octopuses. The army of octopus dogs was instantly burned by Zoo's heat rays. The pungent smell instantly filled the entire space. When Bomber Rex saw this scene, he was shocked and opened his mouth wide. Is this something that humans can do? Atomic Girl Eve also had an expression of disbelief on her face. Who is he? Mark Grayson, who was fighting with the octopus dog, said to the two, he is John Patrick, nicknamed Homelander, and is Patrick's eldest son, Mr. Patrick's eldest son. Eve was a little confused when she heard Mark's words. How many children does Mr. Patrick have? Homelander and Gryffindor. Mr. Patrick doesn't look very old. Why does he have so many superpowered sons? Are these superpowered sons of his born from experiments like herself? Atomic Girl Eve fell into great doubts. Then she cast her eyes on the battlefield. After a round of inspection, she still couldn't find Peter. Because of the previous dream sand, she wanted to thank Peter. Not finding Peter, she sighed with disappointment. Peter, who was being looked for by Eve, was watching the scene on the battlefield in the hotel. Azu, Raven, Boom, Mark and Tom had been sent out by him to deal with the octopus dog. He felt that he didn't need to take action against this level of villains, and Azu and the others could easily handle it. If he had to do everything himself, how could these naughty kids get training? Who are they? At the Global Guard headquarters, Cecil saw Raven and the others use magic to block the pink octopus dog army alone, and asked Rudy with a shocked face. They should be Peter Patrick's children. Rudy immediately retrieved the hotel registration information, and said to Cecil while looking at it, the registration form of the Central Hotel shows that they are registered together, and their last name is Patrick. When Director Cecil saw that Bomb fired a gun while shouting cha-cha-cha and laughing at the octopus dog, his cold face changed slightly. Are these all his children? I'm afraid so. In other words, his children can form a superhero organization that is not weaker than the Global Guard. He originally thought that Peter Patrick himself was perverted enough. Unexpectedly, the other party's children are even more outrageous. If they want to rule the Earth like the Vitrum people, I'm afraid we have no ability to stop them. Director Cecil complained and asked Rudy to project a perspective view of a spaceship in outer space. There are more octopus dogs in this spaceship. We must destroy it. After whispering to himself, he said to Rudy, call the members of the guard. Bomber Rex, Clone Kate and Telescopic Man will stay on the scene to deal with the octopus dogs. The other members of the guard will board the ship. In addition, help me connect with Patrick's children. I want to talk to them. Bomb, Way, Raven, Tom and others were dealing with the octopus dog army. Soon they received Cecil's call for help. Cecil's projection appeared in front of them and told Raven and others that the octopus dogs attacking the Earth were only a few, and there were at least millions of octopus dogs in the spaceship in outer space. In order to completely destroy the octopus dogs, they needed to go inside the spaceship. We have prepared a spaceship and hope to get your help. Cecil invited Raven and others to board the ship. Hearing that they were going to go into space to fight the octopus dog, Raven, Boom, and V volunteered to board the ship. Loki, Mark, and Tom also boarded the ship for their own reasons. 10 minutes later, inside the ship, Spawn looked at the people gathered on the ship and said, everyone, we need to know more about this Martian ship and how they will deal with us once we get on board. As he said that, he looked at the Shapeshifter Smith. Next, it will be the turn of the Shapeshifter Smith to answer our questions. Smith, who was sitting on a chair, saw everyone looking at him and coughed. Actually, I don't want to answer, because that is a Martian military secret. Seeing that Spawn's face turned ugly, knowing that he might be beaten if he didn't say it, he immediately said tactfully, okay, I'll tell you, that ship is one of our warships. It is large in size and can carry millions of squid dogs, but I hope not so many. Although they are small in size, they are very powerful. Black Samson leaned back in his chair and complained, a warship full of powerful demon jellyfish, great. Smith thought for a while and continued to say to Spawn, there should be Martians on this ship. Because a single octopus dog doesn't know how to drive a spaceship. Spawn nodded, then we should find the Martians in sight and get in touch with them. As he spoke, he glanced at Raven and Boom. Then he walked behind the robot driving the spaceship and asked him, Robot, what plan do you have for us to board? The robot glanced at the radar and said, just like he said, the Martian ship is huge. They will treat our spaceship as space debris. We can attach to their hull and cut an entrance on it. Smith immediately objected to the robot's opinion. No, the battleship's sensors are very powerful. It can distinguish between space debris and our aircraft. Raven looked at the huge spaceship close at hand and asked Smith in shock, you are telling us now? Yes, and once it finds us approaching, it will not hesitate to launch missiles. As soon as Smith finished speaking, he saw the flying object logo on the radar approaching quickly. He pointed outside and shouted in horror, don't we have a shield or something? Open it quickly. The robot shook his head and said, this is not Star Trek, we have no weapons. Seeing the missile attack, Atomic Girl Eve immediately shouted to everyone, get closer to me, hurry up. As she said that, she immediately materialized a huge barrier and wrapped everyone in it. Then there was a deafening explosion. In the sky-high flames, the entire spaceship was surrounded by flames and smoke. When the spaceship and its wreckage disappeared into the sky, A pink spherical barrier that enveloped everyone appeared where the spaceship disappeared. What is this? Raven looked at the dark space outside the barrier with an incredible look on her face. Atomic Eve opened her arms to prop up the big spherical barrier and ramp everyone up. Oh my god. Are we in the sky now? Smith asked Atomic Eve in panic. Yes, I don't know how long I can hold on, Eve gritted her teeth and said to everyone. Seeing that the other party was struggling to hold on, Raven immediately used the magic levitation to move the pink barrier to the Martian spaceship. Eve didn't expect Raven to have this ability. Seeing that the barrier was pushed in front of the spaceship by Raven, Eve immediately activated her superpowers and used the barrier to penetrate the spaceship and enter the interior. After entering the interior of the spaceship, everyone saw the enslaved Martians. Smith was about to say a few words to his fellow countrymen, but he didn't expect the Martians to quickly escape from here. At the same time, a tide of pink octopus troops quickly attacked. Octopus dogs with flying abilities rushed towards the crowd. A large number of octopus dogs rushed over one after another. Tom raised his wand and released magic to the octopus dogs. Mark Grayson kept using his fists to hit the flying octopus dogs. Mark, Loki, Tom, do you remember how we dealt with the Trinity Goddess before? Raven shouted to Mark and the other two. Use the Patronus charm to drive them away. Hearing Raven's words, the three immediately came to him. The four people holding their wands tacitly pointed their wands at the octopus dogs that were like a tide. Expatio. As the four people chanted the Patronus charm together, the hot magic energy emitting white light quickly spread outward. All the octopus dogs touched by this warm white magic energy screamed and fled in all directions, but were quickly melted by the white light. Looking at the Patronus magic that spread outward like a tide and brought positive emotions to everyone in the Global Guard was stunned. What is this? Atomic Girl Eve looked at Raven and the other three in shock. Is this magic? With the release of the Patronus charm and the attacks of Mark Grayson, Boom, Way and others, the octopus dogs finally began to retreat. And the mentally exhausted Raven finally put down her wand. As her strength gradually ran out, she did not notice that an octopus dog with an external head in the corner pounced on Raven from behind. Great, we succeeded. Monster Girl saw that most of the octopus dogs were destroyed and shouted happily. Really? Suddenly, everyone heard an ominous voice behind them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 661 The Dark Raven Appears. Mark and the others turned around when they heard the familiar voice, and saw Raven with blood-red eyes and an evil smile on her lips. We warned you that we are very powerful, Raven said, a very unfamiliar voice. Mark saw his sister being parasitized by the octopus dog, and his heart was immediately in a mess. It's over. It's okay for anyone in this spaceship except his sister to be parasitized. But it can't be Raven. Dad once told him that his sister had a three-palace demon sealed in her body. The strength that Raven showed on weekdays was not her true strength. Once the power of the three-palace demon in Raven was activated, even Clark and Azu might not be her opponents. Is that you, sister? Wei saw the change in Raven's voice and asked her worriedly, are you okay? Obviously, she was parasitized by the octopus dog, Spawn said as he flew towards Raven, trying to subdue her. But in an instant, Raven raised her hand and released a black magic energy, which hit his chest and fell heavily to the ground. Do you think you can defeat us? Raven raised her eyes and looked at everyone with a strange red gaze. Her dark hair with a few strands of wine red was blown by the airflow in her body, as if it belonged to the feathers of a raven. On her forehead, a crystal with a strange color appeared. Raven's temperament also suddenly changed, and she became a cold look. Her eyes exuded a look that made people dare not look directly at it, as if they could see through everyone's soul. A strong airflow surged out of her body, and purple light continued to emanate from her body. The powerful momentum made Mark Grayson and Atomic Eve a little frightened. The strange airflow knocked the equipment inside the spacecraft crooked. Atomic Girl Eve looked at Raven, who was bathed in the strange airflow and was a little afraid to look directly at her, and her whole body fell into stagnation. In her blurred vision, she seemed to see a scene that frightened her. A huge devil with red skin, horns on his head and 3 pairs of eyes was roaring at her. Well, I think the situation is a bit bad, so why don't we go back to Earth first and think of a solution, Smith swallowed his saliva and said to the other members of the guard, "I don't think we can leave here safely, and we can't abandon her. If Mr. Padrick knew that we left Raven behind, I think he would be very angry." Mark Grayson adjusted his glasses and flew towards Raven. When Raven saw Mark attacking her, purple black magic energy immediately burst out of her body. The purple black magic energy followed Raven's thoughts and turned into a black smoke-like existence, whistling towards Mark Grayson. Damn it! Feeling the powerful power of the purple black magic energy, Mark Grayson cursed inwardly and quickly dodged. But the black magic energy in the sky still entangled Mark and fell heavily to the ground. Seeing that Mark Grayson was about to hit the ground, Adam Eve immediately materialized a huge baseball glove to catch him. Seeing that Raven's momentum seemed to be rising, the Global Guardians no longer followed the rules and attacked her together. "Ah!" Spawn roared, flying quickly through the obstruction of the magic black tide, and punched Raven's head. But the next second, Raven reached out to catch it. With a crack, Spawn's arm, which had just recovered, was broken again by Raven. With a single hand forward, Spawn was hit hard in the chest and fell backwards with a muffled groan. Facing Mark Grayson rushing over, Raven casually swung forward a black crow's shadow. The shadow seemed to have vitality and quickly wrapped Mark Grayson. No! Seeing Mark Grayson screaming as he was wrapped in the black shadow, Atomic Girl Eve immediately materialized a pink barrier around him, trying to help him resist the invasion of the black shadow. The other members of the Global Guard, Black Samson, Robad and Monster Girl, were entangled by the black shadow before they could rush to Raven. In a short moment, the Global Guard was defeated by Raven. Looking at the members of the Global Guard she defeated, Raven spoke. Her voice echoed, as if it came from a distant hell. "Anger and fear can make people emit powerful power. Controlling these emotions is my specialty. Now I can feel your fear and anger." Raven looked at the people of the Almighty Guard with emotionless eyes. Then she opened her hands, and the black shadow dragged her and flew in front of the stunned Mark, Loki, Tom, Boom, and Wei. The black shadow released from her body can wrap her up and fly, and can also be smashed out like an attacking object. Not only that, the black shadow can also absorb the enemy's physical and mental strength, and similar to the role of a pocket dimension, it can bring a small number of people and animals into it. In addition, the black shadow also has functions such as floating, teleporting, healing, and casting energy shields. Normally, Raven rarely uses this power. Because once it is overused, it must accept all emotions. If the emotions are too intense, they will be corrupted by the three palaces. Therefore, in order to prevent her power from getting out of control and her mind from being corrupted by the three palaces, Raven rarely uses this power. She prefers to use the rune magic taught to her by her father and the magic of Hogwarts. Now Raven has liberated another dark personality and has begun to use power recklessly. Ah! Spitting out a mouthful of blood, his body flew sideways along the ground like a baseball. His body plowed a deep mark on the hard ground of the spaceship. With a crack, Spawn's arm joint was instantly twisted and his body was seriously injured to varying degrees. Bang! 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 Spawn's body plowed more than 10 meters and hit the wall. After smashing the obstacles along the way, his body bounced up and then fell heavily. The metal on the ground splashed, and the huge crashing roar struck the hearts of everyone at the scene. Facing Spawn, who was staggering and trying to stand up, Raven's blood-red eyes turned black in an instant. Red lasers shot out from her eyes in an instant, piercing Spawn's chest. Spawn looked at his chest in astonishment, and with a thump, he finally fell to the ground powerlessly. No, seeing Spawn completely silent, Mark Grayson, who was protected by the protective shield but could be broken through by the shadow at any time, made a painful sound. After getting rid of Spawn, Raven turned her attention to Mark, Boom and others. Her hair turned silver-white in an instant, and her temperament changed completely. "Raven, this is not you. We know you. You will not be controlled by this parasitic creature." Loki opened his hands and protected Boom, Wei, Mark and Tom behind him. Looking at Raven's silver-white and dashing temperament, Loki said to her with a serious expression, "You are Raven, the daughter of Padrick. You will not be controlled by such a low creature." Raven looked at Loki and nodded. "You are right, Loki. Such a low creature will not control the daughter of Padrick." As she said that, she grabbed the octopus dog wrapped around her head and crushed it into powder in an instant. Then Raven looked at the large number of octopus dogs in the spaceship. Under her thoughts, the black shadows invaded like a tide and instantly surrounded the red ocean. Before many octopus dogs could react, They were torn to pieces by the black shadows. Millions of octopus dogs were torn into pieces by Raven in an instant. Seeing this scene, Loki took a deep breath. He immediately understood that Raven was not parasitized by the octopus dogs. The octopus dogs tried to parasitize Raven before, but it stimulated the power of the 3 palace demons in her body. Under the influence of this powerful magic power and spirit, Raven awakened another personality. In other words, the dark power in her body was activated, and she became a more powerful and more extreme Dark Raven. Now Raven can shoot lasers from her eyes, decompose objects with lasers, and change shapes. And her self-soul shadow can tear many people to pieces in an instant. With this powerful force blessing Raven, now except for her father, it is estimated that no one can wake her up. I just hope that I can hold on until my father arrives here to wake Raven up. On the other side, Mark Grayson and Atomic Girl Eve were stunned when they saw the blackened Raven instantly solve the octopus dogs on the whole ship. What kind of monster is this woman? Atomic Eve's face was full of incredible expressions. What are the children of Mr. Patrick? Who are you now, Tom, who was behind Loki, frowned and asked her. Me. Raven looked at Tom and said coldly, I am Raven, the daughter of Patrick, and the daughter that my father loves the most. I am the existence that has signed a soul contract with my father. My soul was exchanged with my father. From the beginning, our souls have been entangled, Raven said, stretching out her right hand, and a powerful black shadow rushed towards Loki. And now, I will exile you to a place where my father can't find you, Loki? Chapter 662, Raven fights the Patrick family alone. Hearing that Raven wanted to exile him, Loki was stunned. He had always been afraid that his father would exile him like he exiled Leela. Unexpectedly, his father did not exile him, but it was Raven who wanted to exile him. He knew that Raven had the ability to teleport across dimensions, and if she really wanted to send him to another space, it would be entirely possible. Hey, Raven, maybe we can talk. Loki stretched out his hand to block Bakugo and the others, trying to negotiate with Dark Raven. Do you remember? When you were very young, I set off fireworks for you. I am your brother. We are a family, and there are Mark, Tom, Bakugo and V. We are a family that supports and helps each other. If Dad knew you did this, he would be very sad. Hearing Loki's words, silver-haired Raven was stunned. She looked at Tom with an expressionless face, Mark with a worried face, Bakugo who was angry, and V who frowned and held Bakugo's hand with a few others with a complicated expression. I know, so I won't kill you. I'll just exile you, Raven slowly said to Loki. This way, Dad won't be in pain because of losing you. After exiling you, I will exile John and Clark to the farthest place, especially John. The relationship between my father and I doesn't need you to get in the way. From the beginning, you shouldn't exist. Loki frowned as he listened to Raven's words. Raven in the form of Dark Raven seemed to be the ultimate father control. He just wanted to inherit his father's farm in Asgard, but Raven wanted to expel all the brothers and sisters except her from the farm, wanting to monopolize her father's love. Compared with Raven's dark thoughts, his little thoughts were really insignificant. Well, if you want to do that, can you let Bakugo and V go? They are too young. If they are missing, Dad will be very anxious. Loki glanced at Bakugo and V, and said to Raven, just think of it as a request from my brother. As he spoke, Loki walked towards Raven. Will you still care about Bomb and V? Raven said as if she was meeting Loki for the first time. I know you, Loki. Whether it's you in the Marvel world or you now, I know you. I can feel the emotions of people around me at all times, and I can even devour people's memories and emotions. Loki, you are narcissistic, craving for attention and afraid of loneliness. At the same time, you are a selfish person. You don't love anyone except yourself. You crave your father's attention, but it's just because you are afraid of your loneliness, because you know that the Loki in each parallel universe will end up alone and facing the end of his fate. Raven bluntly said Loki's inner feelings. No, you are wrong, Raven. Hearing Raven talking about her inner world and feelings, Loki shook his head at her. I am not afraid now, because I know that my father will not let me face the end of my fate alone. As he spoke, Loki walked in front of the silver-haired Raven. And you, Raven, you said you can feel the emotions of everyone around you, but I don't think so, because it is the most difficult to see a person's heart clearly. Dad, Loki suddenly looked behind Raven in surprise. Hearing that her father was coming, Raven's face was a little flustered. As soon as she turned her head, Loki suddenly took out a dagger and stabbed at her. Bang! The next second, facing Loki's sudden attack, the black shadow extending from Raven's body wrapped around his wrist. Loki gritted his teeth. And although the hand holding the dagger tried desperately to stab down, he couldn't stab it no matter how hard he tried. Loki's sudden attack also shocked Tom, Mark, and Balm. None of them expected that Loki, who had always been calm, would suddenly attack Raven. Mark Grayson and Atomic Girl Eve also had a stunned expression. What does this mean? Brothers and sisters in the same family will also fight, and will it develop to the point of using knives? The two didn't know that Raven had turned black, and they thought that Raven had broken up with Loki and others because of some problem. The black shadow wrapped around Loki's wrist, and then pressed Loki down under the control of Raven's consciousness. Feeling a strong force coming, Loki couldn't bear it and fell to the ground. Looking down at Loki who was kneeling in front of her, Raven's black eyes flashed a hint of coldness. Do you think these conspiracies and tricks of yours will work on me, Loki? With a bang, the black shadow hit Loki who was kneeling on the ground and flew backwards. Loki, who was hit hard in the chest, slid along the ground. Crucio, seeing Loki being knocked away, Tom, who could no longer hold back, used the Crucio discourse. Red magic energy rushed towards Raven with a whistling sound in the air. Facing Tom's attack, the shadows around Raven quickly expanded. The shadows on the ground attacked Tom as if they had vitality. Raven dodged the attack of the Crucio curse, and controlled the shadow to materialize in the air in an instant and pounced on Tom. Seeing the overwhelming materialized shadows attacking, Tom immediately raised his wand and released the protection spell. The protective spell was instantly defeated. Tom was hit hard in the chest and rolled backwards. Bang! Tom fell to the ground and the wand flew out of his hand. Looking at Tom with dark eyes, Raven said coldly, "Do you think I don't know your ambition? Tom, you rely on your father's indulgence to you and secretly carry out your conspiracy that will not come to power. You are like Voldemort, you are both evil and ambitious guys. You are a person who will never feel love, because you have never loved, even your father can't wake you up." Raven taunted Tom mercilessly. Tom, who was lying on the ground, heard Raven's taunting and immediately stood up in a hurry. He shouted to Raven while casting a spell without a wand, "Soul out of body." The soul out of body spell can make the other party completely controlled by the caster and his thoughts forced to change. Generally speaking, Tom does not have the ability to cast without a wand. Although he often practices on weekdays, he has never succeeded. Today, facing Raven's mockery of not being able to feel his father's love, he was furious and successfully cast a wandless spell for the first time. The magic energy bang hit Raven's body. However, this spell did not work on Raven. Raven's body swayed, and anger rose in her dark eyes. Bang! The next moment, Raven controlled Shadow to knock Tom, who stood up, back. Seeing Tom being knocked back, Bomb, who was held by Wei's hand, finally couldn't bear it anymore and took out the bang-bang gun to shoot at Raven. Mark saw Raven's performance now and knew that she was not in a normal state. It would not work to wake her up by words. He took out his wand and cast a spell on Raven, intending to use violence to wake up his sister. Seeing that Bomb and Mark were both on, Wei had no choice. She pressed the switch of the glove, and her right hand was instantly covered with the glove. She shouted angrily and attacked Raven. Die! Mark released a spell from his wand, but Raven easily dodged it. God of Swords, Loki stood up and cast a spell at Raven from behind. Raven controlled a dark shadow like a rolling wave, hitting Mark and Loki hard. The next second, Tom picked up the wand and released a red unforgivable curse Crucio at Raven. For a moment, the spell energy in the spaceship collided with each other, whistling in the air like bullets, and splashed countless metal fragments on the floor. Bang! Boom Boom pulled the trigger at Raven, but was knocked out by the dark shadow released by Raven. Fortunately, Boom Boom got high-tech equipment from Tony Stark. The moment Boom Boom was knocked out, the protective device on the belt was activated, and the nano-equipment instantly covered the important parts of Boom Boom's body. At the same time, Boom Boom's gun switched to an energy weapon, aiming at Raven and continued to pull the trigger. Wei, holding the gloves, took advantage of the cover of others to get close to Raven and punched at Raven fiercely. Raven immediately controlled a dark shadow to hit Wei. Wei, who is agile, dodged Raven's attack and punched her with a straight punch after getting close. At the same time, Loki released a wind rune to disperse Raven's shadow behind her. With a bang, Raven was hit by Loki from behind. Raven was a little angry after being attacked. She did not hold back, and the black shadows in the sky carried a powerful momentum and instantly wrapped everyone in. Mark and his men, who were unable to react, were directly hit against the wall of the spacecraft. The members of the Global Guard on the other side were stunned for a moment when they saw the flying spells and energy and the overwhelming black tide. Atomic Eve felt that her inner world was greatly shocked. Even brothers and sisters fight so fiercely? Is this the daily life of Mr. Patrick's family? She remembered that Mark Grayson said that among Mr. Patrick's children, Clark, Azu and Star-Lord should be the strongest. Now that these three people have not appeared, is it just Raven who wants to kill them while here? No. I must stop her. Taking a deep breath, Eve resisted the fatigue and pain in her body, flew into the air, and rushed towards Raven. After repelling Mark and others, silver-haired Raven felt the threat behind her, turned around and raised her hands. The black shadow rushed towards Eve like a tide. Eve formed a barrier with her hands to defend against Raven's attack. At the same time, Mark Grayson finally broke free from the shadow and flew towards Raven. Raven, with an angry look in her black eyes, controlled the shadows on the ground to transform into countless tentacles, and entangled Mark Grayson. At the same time, she opened a portal and controlled the tentacles to pull Mark towards the portal. Chapter 663, Atomic Woman Awakens on the Brink of Death. Swoosh, Mark Grayson was tied up by tentacles and watched himself being pulled into the portal. No, Mark. Seeing Mark being teleported away, Atomic Girl Eve shouted in despair. She wanted to fly over and grab Mark Grayson, but she was a step too late and could only watch him disappear into the portal. Seeing Mark being teleported away, Eve was completely enraged and released an energy shock with both hands, bombarding Raven. Raven controlled the shadow to resist Eve's attack, and released a shadow shock wave with her right hand, blasting Eve out. Do you think you can defeat me? Atomic Girl Eve, in this world, no one can be my opponent, no matter if it's the Vitrum people or the Omni-Man. Raising her head, Raven in the form of Dark Raven looked at Loki and Mark and others who were stuck on the wall of the spaceship by his shadow, and said to them coldly, Loki, Mark, Tom, Bakugo, and Wei, after exiling you to the different space, I will deal with Azu next. I hope you will meet in the different space. Why? Why did you betray your family? Eve asked her with a slight breath as she stood up, covering her injured shoulder. Betrayal. Hearing the other party say that she betrayed, Raven shook her head expressionlessly. No, this is not betrayal. You got one thing wrong, Atomic Girl Eve, that is, only my father is the most important to me. I don't care about the others. I only care about my father. From the beginning to the end, my family has only my father. Our souls are interconnected. Your father? I believe your father will be very disappointed to see you do this. Atomic Eve took a deep breath and said to her, if you do this, I believe he will not approve of your love. Hearing Atomic Eve say this, Raven was a little angry. Do you think you know us very well? Before she finished speaking, the dark shadow was released by her one hand and rushed towards Atomic Eve, who angered her. As the only one who can still fight in this spacecraft, Eve's mind moved slightly, and immediately manifested a pink armor on herself. Eve, who is in the field of subatomic manipulation, can not only create positions and various structures, but also create armor and weapons out of thin air. Wearing armor, Eve flew into the air to dodge Raven's shadow attack. She condensed energy with both hands and attacked Raven. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded in the spaceship. The energy released by Eve collided with a shadow. The violent shock wave released by the collision of energy directly knocked out the monster girl, Black Samson, the shapeshifter Smith and the robot who were lying on the ground. Eve was shocked and stepped back a few steps. Facing the overwhelming shadow frenzy of Raven, she materialized a barrier with both hands to resist. Raven, in the form of Dark Raven, has increased her strength several times. Now she can not only easily release various magics, but also easily perform complex advanced magic. Opening a portal in the space, Raven borrowed the huge magic power of the Three Palace Demon and directly opened the door to the hell of the other dimension, the hell of the DC world, summoning demons weaker than herself. Countless undead creatures exuding the dark color of death were summoned by Raven and rushed towards the Atomic Girl Eve. Under the attack of Raven's dark magic and the undead creatures, the barrier built by Atomic Girl Eve was soon broken. Bang! Eve, who was hit hard by the shadow, was knocked to the ground again by Raven. She landed on her back and her armor was instantly broken. This blow directly made her seriously injured. Eve fell to the ground, gasping for breath. She tried to stand up, but found that she didn't even have the strength to move her fingers. The pain in her body invaded her in waves. The feeling of death was approaching her from a distance. She felt sleepy and couldn't help but close her eyes. In her blurred vision, Eve saw the sand that Peter gave her slowly rising from her body into the air. Looking at the sand emitting silver light in the air, she seemed to see her mother smiling again. Eve clenched her fist and slowly opened it. With a snap, she used all her strength to grab the sand. With strong emotions bursting out, she grabbed the sand and stood up from the ground. Her body, which was originally seriously injured, suddenly returned to normal in an instant. And Eve could feel that her control over her body was stronger than before, and the power in her body was also stronger. Eve held the sand tightly, thinking that it was the sand sent by Peter, which gave her the strength to stand up again. If Peter were here, he would definitely tell her that he could not do this. If he had this kind of ability, he would definitely give himself and his son and daughter dozens of sand. In this way, everyone can become a Super Saiyan, and everyone does not have to train hard to develop their own abilities. In fact, Atomic Girl Eve has an immortal body. And every time she is on the verge of death, or resurrected after death, she will become stronger and return to the best state of her life. Because only death and serious injury can unlock the restrictions in her brain and allow her cells to be reconstructed. Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Holding the sand, Eve whispered to Peter and her eyes gradually became firm. Now, she will protect Loki and others on behalf of Mr. Patrick. Eve, whose power surged several times, opened her arms towards the undead creatures summoned by Raven in the spaceship. The powerful pink energy rushed towards the undead creatures with a boom. In the deafening explosion, the hell creatures summoned by Raven were destroyed by Eve in an instant. Seeing Eve standing up again and greatly strengthened, Raven showed a look of astonishment on her face. How did the other party do it? She thought that Eve, who was seriously injured and fell, was no longer a threat. Unexpectedly, the other party could stand up again and become even stronger. How did you do it? Atom Girl Eve, Raven asked her with an incredible expression on her face. It's simple. It was Mr. Patrick who gave me strength and faith. Eve flew to Raven not far in front of her and said to her slowly. Dad? Impossible. How could Dad give you strength and faith? Raven naturally didn't believe what the other party said. You are just an outsider who knows nothing. I am the only daughter that Dad loves. His most important daughter, Raven, whose eyes became darker, waved forward angrily. The rolling shadow quickly attacked Eve. Eve condensed pink energy with her hands, dodged the attack of the shadow, and attacked Raven. There was a boom explosion, and Raven controlled the shadow to block Eve's attack. The next second, Eve flashed behind her and pressed her arm on her back. Caught off guard, Raven was hit by the energy released by Eve's hand. Without waiting for Raven to react, she immediately materialized a circular barrier to trap Raven. After briefly controlling Raven, Eve immediately untied the control of Loki and others who were tied to the bulkhead. At the same time, she pulled up the members of the Global Guard. Then Eve created a pink sphere with her hands and put the members of the Guard, Loki, Boom and others into it. Using the power of the stance to control the sphere, Eve penetrated the spacecraft and flew quickly towards the Earth. She believed that Raven would soon be able to break free from her control. If she could not send these people to the Earth and contact Mr. Patrick, she was afraid that she and her people would be directly wiped out by Raven. Bang! Soon after Eve took everyone away, Raven destroyed the barrier that Eve had trapped her with, and looked toward the outer space, frowning slightly. At the same time, Azu in New York had cleared all the octopus dogs on the block. This parasitic creature that is a nightmare to ordinary people is just a creature that he can crush with his hands. Zizzy, the hot vision blasted away a group of octopus dogs, and Azu stretched out his hand and grabbed the flying creature with an external brain. What an ugly animal! After Azu complained about the appearance of the octopus dogs, he exerted a little force with his hand and crushed the last octopus dog in his hand. Tilting his head back, Azu avoided the blood spurting out of the octopus dogs. Seeing the police car and ambulance coming not far away, Azu knew that Clark and Star-Lord had also dealt with the octopus dogs. He was about to go back to the hotel, but when he looked up and saw the scene in the sky, his eyes narrowed. In space, Atomic Girl Eve was controlling the sphere to fly towards the Earth, and saw a black dot flying towards her. The black dot quickly enlarged in front of her eyes, and when the other party flew closer, Eve realized that it was Azu. Homelander, seeing Azu appear, Eve showed a surprised expression on her face. What happened? Seeing Loki, Mark, Tom and others injured in the sphere, Azu frowned. What alien creatures attacked you? No, not alien creatures, it's Raven. Raven. Hearing Eve say that Raven did it, Azu looked confused. How could it be Raven? In his cognition, Raven is a girl who is more righteous than Clark. Although Raven seems to have many complicated emotions, his sister has a strong obsession with justice and will always stand on the side of justice to fight against evil forces. Although he doesn't have much feeling for the so-called justice, Azu will not reject Clark and Raven who pursue justice. Now hearing Eve say that Raven did it, Azu is a little unconvinced. Soon he saw a figure flying towards her at high speed. Azu's supervision saw Raven with short silver hair and a unique temperament, and he was stunned. Is this still his sister? Chapter 664, Raven vs. Homelander, who is the one lacking love? Are you Raven? Azu saw Raven flying in front of him and immediately stopped her and asked her doubtfully. Raven, with dark eyes and short silver hair, was obviously not the Raven he knew. Raven, who was chasing Eve, didn't expect Azu to stop her here. She stopped and looked at Azu without any emotion. Just right, John, I was just looking for you, but I didn't expect you to come to me on your own initiative. Azu put his hands on his waist, puffed up his cheeks and looked around, and asked Raven uncertainly, are you talking to me? Of course. As soon as the voice fell, an endless dark shadow surged out of Raven's body and hit Azu at a very fast speed. Azu, who didn't expect Raven to suddenly attack, was hit hard in the chest and flew backwards. Adjusting his body in the air, Azu endured the pain and stopped, looking at the other party with angry eyes. Raven looked at Azu, who was suspended in the air, without any expression on her sneak attack, and said to him coldly, I have wanted to do this for a long time. What? After hearing what Raven said, Azu looked at her as if she didn't know Raven. What did you say? I said, I have wanted to do this for a long time, Raven said to him with a cold expression. John, you are arrogant, conceited, and narcissistic, but you are also inferior, selfish, and cowardly. I can feel your inner emotions. I have felt it since the beginning. Raven stood in the air and looked into Azu's eyes. You are no different from you in the black robe world. He has a powerful force that is almost perfect, but his heart is extremely fragile. He covets the pinnacle of power, but he also longs for family affection and love. He loves his son deeply and hopes to reconcile with his soldier boy, even though he knows that the other party will threaten his position. He has been seeking external attention and praise to cover up his inner emptiness and insecurity, and you, John, you are the same as him. You also have powerful power, but your heart is extremely fragile. You are afraid that your father will no longer love you, and you long for your father's attention. You are the same, both of you are crazy people who lack love. Hearing Raven's ruthless words, Azu's eyes instantly turned red, and the heat gaze accumulated in his eyes. Although he wanted to shoot the heat gaze immediately, considering that Raven was his sister, he was forced to hold back. Raven pretended not to notice the burning gaze in Azu's eyes, and continued to say to him, you think you have a different status because you are Dad's first child. No, you just came early. Dad has always loved me the most. I am the one who can inherit everything from him. Azu stared at Raven and soon realized that Raven was not on the right state. Who do you think you are? Raven, you are just a willful and arrogant guy. Your father is not Dad, your father is the Three Palaces demon, Azu immediately retorted unceremoniously. Shut up. Hearing Azu say that her father is the Three Palaces demon, Raven immediately became angry. The dark shadows in the sky roared towards Azu. Shut up. My father is Peter Patrick, always has been, from the beginning. The Three Palaces demon has nothing to do with me. Raven was immediately broken by Azu's exposure of the part that she cared about the most in her heart. She gritted her teeth and released a shadow carrying powerful energy, attacking Azu like a dark cloud. Seeing that Raven was broken by his words, Azu immediately took advantage of the victory and pursued. Don't deceive yourself, Raven. Your father is the Three Palaces demon. He even chased you to the farm. You can't deceive yourself. Azu dodged Raven's attack and continued to say to him, you think I'm the same as Azu from the Black Robe world. No, you're wrong. He's different from me. I'm father's real hero. While dodging the attacks of the shadows all over the sky, Azu said to Raven, the difference between us is that although Dad also taught me to follow the rules, the focus is not on controlling me, but on teaching me how to control myself, because Dad knows very well that my abilities are very powerful and special. There are not many people in the world who can control me. Only I can restrain myself, so Dad has been guiding and tolerating me. He looked at the increasingly annoyed Raven and continued, On the other hand, although Walter and they are the parents of another native of the Black Robe world, no one is his parent, because these people only regard him as Walter's asset, experiment, and weapon. Even though he had a kind and beautiful side when he was a child, it was deliberately strangled by Walter because these attributes would make him weak, because they need a machine that appears to be righteous and kind on the outside, but is cruel and merciless on the inside. They know it is difficult to control him, so they try every possible means to use all kinds of means as bargaining chips to control him, using both soft and hard methods, both light and dark. Zizzy, facing the shadow controlled by Raven, Azu said the last word, and his eyes shot out hot rays of light towards the shadow. The other me has not been a human since birth. In Walter's eyes, he is a cash cow and a killer. In the eyes of the public, he is a superhero and an idol. In the eyes of his colleagues, he is a time bomb. In his own eyes, he is a god and a monster, and I have been a human since I was a child. My superpowers are my father's legacy to me. Learning to control myself and having an upright heart are my father's gifts to me. These two are natural and indispensable. For the first time, Azu spoke out his true thoughts. We two have been different since the beginning. I have never lacked love. I just love my father. I love the farm, and you, Raven, you are the one who is most afraid, because you are afraid of losing your father's love, afraid of losing your father, so you try to exile Star-Lord and Mark and the others. You are just a damn, loveless, willful little girl who only wants her father. Hearing Azu's heartbreaking words, Raven's anger intensified. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. More black shadows emerged from Raven's body, and she exuded a powerful dark aura. The black shadow turned into a huge crow, blocking out the sun and the sky, and attacked Azu. You said you have an upright heart, John, that's the biggest joke. Raven stood in the air and said angrily to Azu, next, I will exile you to the deepest part of hell, so that you can never leave there, never return to the farm, and never find your father. As soon as the voice fell, the shadow crows controlled by Raven surrounded Azu. Azu wanted to break free, but the next second he was hit in the chest by a powerful shadow force. Raven, with huge magic power, easily suppressed Azu. Azu, who was blown away by the shadow power, just stabilized his body, covered his chest and raised his head, and saw a huge crow whistling towards him. Azu immediately flew forward, ready to break through in front of Raven and attack Raven at close range. But unexpectedly, Raven's reaction was also very fast. Her hands condensed black shadow magic, instantly hitting Azu and knocking him back again. At the moment when Azu was hit like a baseball, a huge black crow roared and swooped over. The crow exuding strange magic wrapped around Azu's body and pulled him towards the ground at a high speed. Feeling the whistling wind in his ears, Azu struggled to break free, but the shadow not only wrapped him tightly, but also constantly absorbed his physical strength, making it impossible for him to use his strength. Damn it! Seeing the ground getting closer and closer, Azu, who was unable to break free, couldn't help but curse inwardly. Boom! The black shadow wrapped around Azu and slammed heavily on the city square. A deafening roar sounded on the ground, smoke and dust quickly spread, and the ground shook slightly. A huge pit formed in the center of the square. Fortunately, due to the attack of the octopus bug, there were no citizens on the square, so no innocent citizens were accidentally injured. When the smoke in the giant pit dissipated, Azu's figure lying at the bottom appeared. Azu, whose uniform was torn and tattered, looked miserable. He tried to stand up while panting slightly, but found that he had no strength at all. Raven's earth throw hurt him badly. This bastard. He was so cruel to his own brother. At the same time, at the headquarters of the Global Guard, Director Cecil looked at Atomic Girl Eve and the listless Loki and others who were wrapped in the pink sphere barrier behind her in shock. What happened? You were messed up by the octopus dog? Where is the invincible young man? Director Cecil frowned and asked Eve with an incredible expression on his face. No, it's not the octopus bug, it's the Raven. I mean, Raven, Eve, holding her chest and breathing heavily, said to Director Cecil, it's Raven. After Raven was parasitized by the octopus bug, her temperament changed drastically and she defeated all of us. The invincible young hero was exiled to an unknown space by her. You said that Raven attacked everyone. These brothers and sisters of his were also injured by her, it looks like that, and she chased after us immediately. Her power has become extremely powerful and no one can stop her. Eve's voice just fell, and a black shadow fell to the ground in the city square monitored in the hall. After the smoke and dust quickly dissipated, Cecil and Eve looked at the screen in shock. The two found Azu lying at the bottom of the pit. Director Cecil's expression became even uglier when he saw this scene. "We must contact Peter Patrick. Only he can stop his daughter." Director Cecil immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. On the other side, Mark Grayson, who was exiled to an unknown world, scratched his head and picked up a newspaper from the newsstand. Spider-Man, is he a city savior or a villain? Looking at the headline on the newspaper, Mark fell into deep thought. What is Spider-Man? Chapter 665, The Invincible Young Hero, How Come My Father is the Owner of a Newspaper? Mark Grayson was thinking about what Spider-Man was when he suddenly saw a live news broadcast on the big screen in the city square in the distance. The person who appeared on the live broadcast was actually his father, Almighty Man. No, that's not right. Although the other person looked almost exactly like his father, his temperament was completely different. Who is that? Mark Grayson was stunned for a moment, and a big question mark appeared in his head. In this world that Raven teleported him to, didn't his father become a superhero? With doubts in his heart, Mark Grayson cast his eyes on the screen in the square. Hi, dear audience, I'm Jameson from the Daily Bugle. I want to say a few sincere words to everyone. Now the streets are full of praise for Spider-Man. I don't think this is a good phenomenon, because Spider-Man has never been a city superhero. He is just a criminal and destroyer in this city. Think about it, who would want their children to imitate Spider-Man? If your children imitate Spider-Man, they are likely to hurt themselves. Children should emulate more traditional heroes, such as John Jameson, who has become an astronaut. Jameson, who claims to be the owner of the Daily Bugle, spoke non-stop. The hero that children should worship is an astronaut, not Spider-Man. Looking at the father of this world, commenting on the so-called superhero Spider-Man as sonorously as a commentator, Mark fell into deep thought. For a moment, he couldn't understand what happened in this world. Why didn't the father of this world become a superhero, but became a newspaper owner instead? Mark, who couldn't figure it out for a long time, decided to understand this world first, and then find a way to return to the original world. His father was still on the planet Sexa, ready to deal with the possible appearance of the Vitrum people. His mother was at home taking care of his younger brother. If he could not return to his original world, he did not know what terrible things would happen in the end. And Raven had already turned evil, and he did not know who would stop her. Would Mr. Patrick be a match for his own daughter? If Mr. Patrick could not do it, then no one could stop her, and he was afraid that his world would suffer. After all, Raven once said that even the Omniman and the Vitrum people would not be her opponents. Taking a deep breath, Mark took off his glasses that were broken by Raven and decided to change a pair of glasses first. On the other side, Jameson, the boss of the Daily Bugle, who not only looks exactly like Omniman but also has almost the same voice, smoked his cigar and shouted to his employees, "Look at your headlines these days. Osborn's mansion caught fire, and you're going to use the fire in the house where these fat cats live as the headline. This is a really rubbish story. This story is so rubbish, we don't even have any decent technology to figure out what's going on." After spraying at the newspaper employees, Jameson waved his hand and said, "Change all the headlines to Spider-Man tomorrow. This guy who wears it tights and swings around the city is our headline. This is the guarantee of newspaper sales. I want to know his name and his zodiac sign." Although Spider-Man was sprayed on TV, Jameson still wanted to leave the front page headline to him. Hearing the boss mention Spider-Man again and being very interested in Spider-Man, the employees looked at each other. The boss is really hypocritical, saying that he hates Spider-Man, but his body is very honest. I want to know if those stories about him being able to fly over rooftops and walls are true. Can he really do that? Is he a mutant? Is he an alien who came to Earth on a rocket? Jameson slammed the table and said in his unique loud voice, "I want to know if he really has those superpowers, or if he's just a fraudulent charlatan." As he spoke, he cast his gaze at the editor sitting next to him. "Yolich, I need you to go to the stadium and quickly find a way to write some follow-up reports on the robbery." "What?" Urich blinked, not quite hearing the task assigned to him by his boss. "I heard that Spider-Man was also involved in the robbery. I want to know if that guy participated in the robbery. If that's the case, why can that scout in pajamas still wander around the street all day?" Urich said to him. "But Jonah, my job is..." Before he finished speaking, Jameson interrupted him. "You can let Murdoch wait for a few days. If there is no progress, you should give up. He looked at all the reporters. I want to know everything about Spider-Man. I have smelled that this will be our new hot spot. Is he a hero or a criminal, hypocritical or a scam? People will not. They will not be satisfied with only knowing one aspect of his life, and in fact, this time, I want that crawling guy to be on the headlines of our newspapers. Okay, adjourn the meeting, and get moving. After the meeting, when everyone left, Jameson sat in the manager's chair, smoking a cigar while looking at his family photo on the table. The family photo showed him, his wife, and his son John Jameson. When he suggested that children emulate traditional heroes, he was referring to his son, John Jameson, who has now become an astronaut. Putting down the cigar in his mouth, he thought of Spider-Man again. In fact, he didn't hate Spider-Man for no reason. His father was a war hero in front of the media and the public, but he was a sadist with a bad temper at home. Jameson grew up in this torture. Therefore, Jameson regarded his father's disguise in front of the public and the media as a mask, and at the same time he associated this mask with Spider-Man. He thought Spider-Man was just pretending to be a hero, and privately he might be a scumbag, a complete bastard. Under Spider-Man's mask, he had the same thing as his father. Squeak, the door was suddenly pushed open, and Urich suddenly walked in. Jameson, who was very dissatisfied with his subordinates interrupting him, shouted to Ulrich, Ben, you'd better explain your rude behavior to me, otherwise your bonus this week will be deducted in half. Ulrich came over and handed him the photo in his hand. Jonah, if you see the photo in my hand, not only will my bonus not be deducted, but I will be rewarded. He handed the photo to Jameson. Jameson looked at the somewhat blurry photo and was stunned. The blurry image was a photo of Spider-Man swinging around the city, but it was not the Spider-Man he was familiar with. The black and white spider uniform with a red line in the middle and a hood was obviously different from the Spider-Man costume he knew. Looking at the hooded, slim and well-proportioned Spider-Man who was obviously a woman, Jameson was stunned for a moment, and then asked Ulrich, is this Spider-Man female, a fake Spider-Man? I'm afraid so. In the evening, after wandering around the city for a few times, Mark Grayson roughly knew the information of this world. There is no global guard in this world, nor is there Omni-Man. There was no Padrick Farm, Mr. Peter Padrick, or his children with superpowers. There were only some villains whose names had never been heard of and some superheroes. Among the many superheroes, the most famous one should be Spider-Man in New York. This superhero who shoots spider silk from his wrist and swings around in the city seems to be very popular. Unfortunately, this Spider-Man does not seem to have the ability to send himself back. With a sigh, Mark looked up at the other party's coffee shop and prepared to go in for a bite to eat. Just as he was about to cross the road, he saw a blonde girl with a ponytail, holding a book in her hands and a backpack on her shoulders walking out of the coffee shop. As soon as the girl with outstanding temperament left the coffee shop, a black man in a hat ran up from behind, snatched the blonde girl's school bag and was about to run away. Seeing the blonde girl's backpack being robbed, Mark immediately activated his super speed and moved in front of the robber. Hey, buddy, he greeted the startled black man, stretched out his fist, and punched the other party in the nose, hitting the other party and squatting on the ground with his nose covered and screaming. You're unlucky today. Mark Grayson picked up the backpack and handed it to the girl who ran over panting. Thank you, the blonde girl thanked Mark repeatedly. Although Mark's clothes were a bit strange, the yellow hood covered the upper part of his head, only revealing the lower part of his face, and he was wearing glasses, which looked out of place. You're welcome. Since I saw him, I will definitely not let him go. The blonde girl nodded, and then asked, thank you, can I know your name? Mark Grayson said to the other party, I'm the Invincible Young Man. Invincible Young Man. Hearing this strange name, the blonde girl was slightly stunned, and then pretended to be calm and replied to Mark, I'm Gwen Stacy, studying at a nearby university. Just as Gwen said her name, Mark suddenly felt something behind him. Turning his head sharply, Mark saw a black and white figure flashing into a nearby alley. Mark quickly followed, and saw a female figure wearing a black and white uniform and a hood, shooting spider silk and swinging towards a distant building. Is this Spider-Man? Mark couldn't help but whispered as he watched the other person disappear. No, that's not right. This is not Spider-Man. Spider-Man's uniform is not this color, and the Spider-Man in this world is not a woman. Chapter 666 Please call me Gwen Spider. Are you okay? Gwen Stacy came over and asked him carefully. Yes, I'm fine, Mark Grayson looked towards the distant buildings and found that Spider-Man had disappeared. Seeing Mark's action, Gwen looked up in confusion and looked into the distance. "Anyway, thank you, invincible young man." Gwen, who didn't see anything, thanked him again. Then she felt a little strange and asked, "Did you just become a superhero?" "Yes, you may not have heard of my name. I'm a new superhero." Mark Grayson smiled awkwardly at him. "I have something else to do. See you next time." Mark Grayson, who felt that there were still a lot of things to bother him, waved to Gwen and turned around and left quickly. Looking at Mark's back as he left, Gwen frowned slightly. She wanted to talk to this strange superhero, but she didn't expect him to leave so soon. Night. A city full of neon lights. During the day, Mark Grayson saw Spider-Man, wearing a black and white spider uniform, standing on the tallest building in the center of the city, looking at the city skyline in the distance. With her hood off, her face with delicate features was illuminated by the neon lights. It was exactly the same face as Gwen Stacy that Mark Grayson saw during the day. However, the Gwen Stacy here was not the female student Gwen that Mark saw. Like Mark, she came from a parallel world. Gwen in the parallel world grew up in Forest Hills. Her parents were George Stacy and Helen Stacy. After her mother died, George raised Gwen alone. Like all rebellious girls, Gwen always went against her father's will, so Gwen always played the drums at home alone. Later, Gwen became friends with her neighbor Peter Parker, and both of them loved music. After entering Midtown High School, Gwen and Mary Jane and others formed a rock band, with Gwen as the drummer. Once, Gwen was bitten by a genetically engineered spider and developed spider-like abilities, so she became Spider-Woman. Retired superhero Janet Van Dyne gave her a uniform and a set of web shooters. But at first she just wanted to attract attention, not help others. Later, after her father George said that Spider-Woman could help more people, Gwen changed. Gwen's good friend Peter Parker was often bullied at school, and Gwen had helped Peter drive away the bullies who bullied him many times. Peter longed to be like Spider-Woman, so he began to experiment with his body, and the experiment turned him into a lizard-like monster that destroyed Midtown High School. In order to stop Peter, Gwen fought with the other party. As a result, Peter was unfortunately seriously injured and died in the battle with Gwen. Spider-Woman was labeled a criminal by the media, and people believed that Spider-Woman was responsible for Peter's death. Gwen was troubled by the death of her good friend Peter, and she redoubled her efforts to fight criminals in the hope of redeeming herself. But Peter's death has always troubled him, and even if he travels through different worlds, this pain will not disappear. Gwen lowered her head and looked at the dimensional space teleporter on her wrist. She didn't expect that the self in this universe she traveled through was just an ordinary student, and Peter, who turned into Lizard Man and was killed by her in her world, became Spider-Man instead. Yes, she has investigated that the Spider-Man in this world is Peter Parker. Peter Parker actually became Spider-Man. Is there anything more incredible than this? Does she have a chance to make up for her regret? With a slight sigh, Gwen shook back her thoughts and thought of the scene in the daytime. During the day, she secretly followed herself in this world, wanting to see the life of another self, but she didn't expect that she was almost discovered by the guy called Invincible Young Man. Blowing the cold wind at night, Gwen sat on the rooftop of the office building, stretched her long legs outside, and looked at the bustling city outside. Reaching out her hand, she let a small spider on the ground crawl onto her arm. Looking at the spider on her arm, she exhaled deeply and said to herself, "Spiders are always so magical. They exist in every corner of the earth, including bathrooms. Although they have a bad reputation, they are highly adaptable and fast, and they always survive." Gwen always has complicated feelings about spiders. Spiders helped her become Spider-Man. She also learned a lot from spiders. The most important thing she learned was that the best thing about these little creatures is that they don't follow the beaten path. While thinking, Gwen Stacy put on the spider mask, shot out spider silk from the wrist transmitter, and swung towards the building opposite. Wow, Gwen made a happy sound while the spider silk swung in the air. She liked the feeling of swinging around the city. It was like riding the coolest roller coaster in the world. It would be a new experience every time, and there would be no need to wait in line. This is freedom, and she would never give it up. Gwen's spider was swinging in the air, and suddenly her spider sense was activated, and she discovered a robbery in the block. In the dimly lit alley, 3 masked guys were holding pistols and pointing them at the panicked lady. "Give me everything you have, or I don't mind shooting you," the masked robber threatened the lady with a gun. Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, a figure came to the ground. Spider-Gwen supported the ground with one hand and stood up in a handsome posture. Spider-Man, seeing the appearance of Spider-Gwen, the armed robbers were immediately frightened. Idiot, Spider-Man is not like this. Another armed robber pointed his gun at Gwen. Being pointed at by the gun, Gwen spread her hands. Hey, why can't you put down your guns and leave here? Hearing Gwen's words, several people not only did not put down their guns and leave, but opened the safety and pointed their guns at her. Well, it seems you don't want to. As soon as Gwen finished speaking, spider silk shot out from her wrist, bang, hitting the pistol of the robber in the middle, pulling it back. Swoosh, swoosh, then two spider silks were accurately shot at the faces of the other two robbers. The robbers, whose faces were covered with spider silk, immediately fell to the ground with their faces covered in pain and tore the spider silk. Facing the robbers who were instantly subdued by her, Gwen continued to shoot spider silk, sticking the two struggling people to the wall. After doing everything, she clapped her hands and said, "This was originally very simple, but now it has become sticky and weird." Another robber whose pistol was taken away by spider silk saw the miserable state of his two companions and immediately ran away. Gwen did not chase him, but shouted to him from behind, "So cool. Enjoy your life of waving guns everywhere and being chased. Thank you, Spider-Man." The rescued lady came over excitedly and gave Gwen a big hug. "Well, although I'm not Spider-Man, it doesn't matter." Gwen gently patted the lady's shoulder and said to her, "Thank you, sincerely, lady. Can you notify the police? I'm going to buy a hamburger." "Of course, leave it to me." The lady nodded in agreement. "Great, I'll go get some burgers then. See you later." Gwen waved at the lady, and shot out a spider silk from her wrist, leaving the street. Swinging on the spider silk, she landed on the rooftop of the office building, and turned around to look at the corner of the wall behind her that was covered by shadows. "Hey, no need to hide, I've seen you." Found by Gwen, Mark Grayson scratched his head awkwardly and stood up. "Sorry, I didn't mean to follow you. I wanted to help when I saw the robbery." Mark said that he didn't mean to follow him. "That's really a coincidence. I'm Spider-Woman, or you can call me Ghost Spider." Gwen had seen Mark helping herself in this world to deal with the robbers, and she had a good impression of him. Moreover, Mark could move in front of the robbers in an instant, and this amazing speed was the first time she had seen it. It can be imagined that this guy is definitely very powerful. Gwen looked at him and fell into deep thought. "I'm the invincible young man." Mark shook hands with her. "Invincible young hero, a cool name, but why is this the first time I hear the name of this superhero?" Gwen asked him in confusion. "Are you a novice hero?" Mark shrugged. "Maybe I'm from another world." "Another world?" Hearing Mark's words, Gwen narrowed her eyes and looked at Mark again. Could it be that the other party also came from a parallel world like herself? However, if the other party really came from a parallel world, his world must be a not-so-wonderful world. A guy with such superpowers will cause a lot of trouble, whether it is good or bad for the world. Gwen began to think wildly. Taking a deep breath, she raised her head and looked towards the dark night. In the dark night, a black dot gradually enlarged. It was a figure flying in the air. The world of invincible young hero. Raven flew down from the sky, looking at Azu, who was in the pit, injured and breathing heavily, and shook her head. She said to him coldly, "You said my father is the Three Palaces demon." "No, it's impossible. It's impossible forever. I have only one father, and that's Peter Patrick. Whether it's this body or the soul inside it, they all belong to my father. She has my father's soul flowing in her." Raven stretched out her hand and activated space magic, creating a portal in the air. A black shadow came out from her body and attacked Azu at the bottom of the pit. Azu, who was unable to react in time, was swept into the air by the shadow. Damn it! Azu tried desperately to break free from the control of the shadow, but found that he couldn't use any strength at all, and could only watch himself being pulled towards the portal. Chapter 667, Ruin. I have never seen such a weak brother. Seeing that he was about to be pulled into the portal, Clark activated his super speed and rushed to the scene in an instant. In the dark shadows, Clark grabbed Zu's arm and helped him break free from the control of the shadow. Then Star-Lord also felt the scene. Clark looked at Raven, who had short silver hair and a completely different temperament from before, with a surprised expression on his face. "Raven, is that you?" Clark asked her uncertainly. "Of course this is not the Raven we know, otherwise why would she be so crazy?" Zu, covering his wound, said to Clark unhappily. What happened? Star-Lord asked with an incredible face. As you can see, this Raven has completely fallen into madness. She wants to exile us all to another space and then monopolize her father, Zeus said to Star-Lord, gritting his teeth and casting an angry look at Raven. You're right, John, Clark, and Star-Lord, I'm going to exile all of you. Raven looked at Azu with cold eyes, and, John, I'm going to exile you, the biggest bastard, to a place where no one can find you. As soon as she finished speaking, countless shadows came out of her body and attacked the three people. Under the erosion of the shadows, the nearby buildings finally couldn't bear the destruction and fell down with a loud boom. The huge roar penetrated the air and spread to the outside. The ground was shaken and shook violently, as if a strong earthquake had occurred. The soil, stones and other debris in the pit burst out one after another. Raven in the air looked at the stunned Clark and Star-Lord with a disdainful look. None of you can escape. A sound pierced the air from Raven's throat. Seeing that Raven seemed to have fallen into evil, Star-Lord said to Clark helplessly, although I like Raven very much, she looks like she deserves a beating now. Star-Lord was in a very bad mood and decided to teach Raven, who looked like she deserves a beating now, a lesson. Hey, Raven, do you know one thing? That is, when you were a child, you were countless times cuter than you are now. Now, I want to show you how terrible your brother, who once defeated Lucifer, the guardian of Patrick's farm, and always kept a low profile, will be once he gets serious. Without waiting for Clark to react, Star-Lord coughed hard, stuffed the elemental gun into his waist, pressed the switch of the face mask, and condensed silver god energy with his hands. The silver god energy turned into a residual image and rushed towards Raven. Facing Star-Lord's attack, a group of black shadows separated from Raven's body. The shadows exuding an ominous aura combined and turned into the appearance of crows, roaring and rushing towards Star-Lord. The shadow released by Raven's self-soul instantly defeated Star-Lord's divine energy, and then rushed towards Star-Lord with the remaining momentum. The speed of Shadow Crow was more than one step faster than the speed of the divine energy, and it flew in front of Star-Lord with a whoosh. Bang! Star-Lord was shocked and could not dodge in time, and was hit hard by Shadow Crow. Star-Lord's body flew along the ground like a baseball, and the hard ground was plowed into a deep gully by his body. Bang! 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 After Star-Lord's body plowed the ground for hundreds of meters, it hit a nearby bench. The park bench was smashed to pieces, and then Star-Lord's body bounced up and fell heavily. The ground was quickly surrounded by dust, and a huge roar resounded in the space. Star-Lord, lying on the ground, panting hot air from his mouth, looked up at the dark night in a daze, and began to doubt his life. On the other side, Raven looked at Star-Lord, who was lying on the ground and doubting his life, and couldn't help but complain, I don't have such a weak brother, Star-Lord. Clark looked at Star-Lord, who was embarrassed right away, and fell into silence. Logically speaking, Star-Lord's divine energy would not be so weak. He had talked to another Star-Lord from the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Marvel world. The father of the other Star-Lord was called Ego, also known as Self, a huge living planet with a long life and powerful strength. He called himself a Celestial, but it was unknown whether he was a Celestial. Ego wanted to rule the universe by reproducing blood. One of his descendants was Star-Lord. After Star-Lord knew that it was Ego who killed his mother, he angrily used the power brought by his so-called celestial blood to kill Ego. The Star-Lord in the Marvel world, who fully awakened the power of the Celestials, can even defeat the Celestials. Now that he has the power of the Celestials, and has been trained by the Godfather for so long, Star-Lord naturally won't be so weak. Clark can only attribute the reason to Star-Lord completely letting him go. Facing his sister, Clark estimated that Star-Lord didn't want to take action and just wanted to wait for the Godfather to solve the problem. Clark was just thinking about it when the New York City police began to arrive at the scene. When the police car arrived at the scene, they saw Raven in the air, who looked like an evil villain, and immediately regarded her as a threat. After shouting to Raven to surrender, the police opened fire on her when they saw that Raven did not respond. Dense bullets swept towards Raven like a rainstorm. Raven's ability at this time had become so dark that even the Three Palaces demon was afraid of it. The sticky black substance emanating from her body almost condensed into substantial black crystals. The strong wind emanating from her body whistled, and a sharp sound was emitted in the air. Facing the attack of the bullet, Raven controlled the shadow to form a shield to resist it. The black shadow emanating from her body leaked a little magic power, which blew the police who fired the gun so hard that they couldn't open their eyes. Then, Under Raven's control, the shadow turned into a group of roaring crows, and rushed towards the police, who fired the gun with a shriek in the air. With a loud bang, the police car was hit by the shadow crow and exploded violently. The scene suddenly turned into a sea of fire. The burning flames, like falling raindrops, crackling from the sky. The police, surrounded by the flames, fled without attacking Raven. Clark saw that the police were in danger and immediately activated his super speed to help a policeman who was almost injured by the falling flames to resist the flames. After helping all the police evacuate, Clark cast his eyes on Raven in midair. At this time, two pairs of eyes appeared on Raven's forehead, and flames seemed to be burning in her black pupils. In the middle of her forehead was a dark red diamond crystal, and the whole person exuded a weird aura. Clark glanced at Azu, who was covering his wound and breathing heavily, and cast his eyes on Raven. Raven, this is not the real you. Clark tried to wake Raven up. Think about it, you would never do this normally, you love everyone and would never hurt anyone, really? Clark, do you think you know me very well? Raven looked at Clark with an unhappy expression. Don't pretend to be a good person, and don't pretend to be a righteous and loving person. Dad often says that you will become a perfect Superman, but I don't think so. That's because there has never been anything perfect in the world. From ancient times to the present, there has never been a perfect creature. Whether physically or psychologically, the existence of an individual must be unique. It has its own advantages, and it must also have some disadvantages, Raven said coldly to Clark. Dad regards you as the last hope and thinks that Superman represents all that is good. On the contrary, I think you are the most dangerous person, because a seemingly perfect person is easily bewitched. I once had a dream. In the dream, you were the scariest guy. You even wanted to hurt Dad. It only takes one bad day, like you in the world of injustice, losing Lois and the child, and you will instantly turn from the greatest superhero into the most terrible dictator. I want to prove to my father that you are definitely not his last hope, but I am. Clark was stunned by Raven's ridicule. He took a deep breath and replied to Raven, yes, Raven, you are right. I am definitely not perfect, and Superman is not perfect either. I am just an ordinary farm boy. Perhaps Superman is just the dream of a Kansas farmer. He paused and continued to Raven, do you know what I am most fortunate about? I am most fortunate to have my parents and Godfather by my side. I am not the Dark Knight. I don't need my parents to be shot to death in front of me before I understand. Maybe you should help others. Crime is wrong. Murder is wrong. I didn't understand that if you have superpowers, you should use them to help others until Uncle Ben died in my hands. I was not trapped on a deserted island, nor was I forced to give myself a ring and join the interstellar police. I was not raised by the Amazon tribe, nor was I exposed to radiation on a spaceship. I am just a farmer from Kansas with powerful superpowers, but absolute power does not cause absolute corruption, because of the teachings of the Godfather. Absolute power keeps me away from fear, greed, hatred and other weaknesses that stem from the inner anxiety of human beings. Because of the teachings of the Godfather, I will always make the right choices. Staring into the stunned eyes of Raven, Clark said word by word, this is my specialness. I am not a genius, and I may not be the most powerful person in the world, but because of the existence of the Godfather, I will not make mistakes and become his last hope. Raven, you, after being verbally bombarded by Clark, Raven was a little angry. Azu and Clark, why are they so annoying? Sure enough, these two guys are the biggest obstacles and the biggest threats between him and his father. He wants to send these two guys who are the best at talking to the farthest place. Shut up. Clark, while Raven yelled at Clark to shut up, she gathered black shadows with her hands and attacked Clark fiercely. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 668 Clark shatters Raven's dream of loving her father alone. Facing the attack of the angry Raven, Clark used his super speed to dodge. After dodging the opponent's attack, Clark shot out heat vision from his eyes and shot at Raven. Zizzy, the heat vision burned the air and moved in front of Raven in an instant. Raven, who had already made preparations in advance, controlled the shadow to block it in front of her. The shadow that blocked the heat vision quickly extended outward. Clark raised his arm to block the invading shadow. But the shadow's movement was faster than Clark could imagine. The dark shadow directly attacked Clark's chest. With a dull bang, Clark was hit hard and flew out. With a dull bang sound and dust all over the sky, Clark hit the city building like a cannonball. The walls of the surrounding office buildings were completely broken by him. The wall made a crackling sound, and the debris burst around with violent air turbulence, like a downpour. The air made a bursting sound, and the surrounding citizens who had not left yet fled in panic. Clark rubbed his aching chest, stood up from the ruins, and looked at Raven, who was looking down on him with an expressionless face. Raven was surrounded by black shadows, which completely covered her face. They were strange, powerful, and impressive. Clark adjusted his emotions and clenched his fists. Since Raven could not be awakened now, he would use violence to awaken her. Clark had just thought of this. Bang! The crow transformed by the shadow suddenly appeared behind Clark. The shadow crow spread its wings and let out a cry. The shadow constructed existence, which exuded powerful magic, hugged Clark in its arms and quickly wrapped him up. Clark groaned and felt weak all over. His strength was quickly drained and his body became tired in an instant. Most importantly, his emotions seemed to be constantly deprived. Although Clark was not an expert in happiness, he was optimistic about most things and was a person full of positive emotions. Now, he could feel that his happiness and even all positive emotions were slowly being drained. The sharp burning sensation of magic entered his body, even though he was protected by a body of steel. It seemed that this powerful magic could penetrate the body of steel and seep into his body. Everything around Clark was black. The magic composed of black shadows invaded his body and sucked away all his emotions, stealing his physical and mental strength. Plop! Clark finally couldn't bear the invasion of this black magic and fell to the ground powerlessly. Seeing Clark defeated by herself, Raven slowly fell from the air. Dad said you are the embodiment of perfection and hope, but look at you now, Clark, you are in such a mess now, you don't look like a Superman. Raven looked at Clark, who fell in front of her, raised her eyebrows slightly, and said to him in a slightly proud tone. Seeing Clark fall to the ground, Azu on the side couldn't help but spit out a word of waste in his mouth, endured the pain and weakness all over his body, and staggered to his feet from the ground. Clark, this guy, was quite tenacious when he fought with himself. Now he fell down after being hit by Raven. Could it be that this guy only gets excited when he hits himself? In his heart, Azu began to complain about Clark's confusing behavior. Soon he forced himself to turn his thoughts to the present, and his angry eyes were fixed on Raven. With a whoosh, Azu activated his super speed and flew towards Raven quickly. Although Raven was facing Clark, she was also paying attention to Azu's behavior from behind. Without waiting for Azu to attack her from behind, Raven controlled the shadows to block behind her. At the same time, the sky was full of shadows emitting powerful pressure, attacking Azu like a tide. The injured Azu was hit in the chest with a bang and fell backwards. After knocking Azu away, Raven did not pursue the victory, but chanted a magic spell and instantly created a circular structure composed of shadows. The circular substance constructed by the black shadow, like a dark cloud, attacked Azu directly. The air made a whistling sound, and the whole space seemed to be shaking due to her powerful power. Bang! Azu, who was knocked away, was unable to react and was suddenly pulled into the dark shadow. Deep inside the immobile shadow, Azu felt like he was drowning and couldn't breathe. All the strength and mental power in his body were sucked away in an instant, and it seemed that his emotions were also sucked away. On the other side, seeing Azu surrounded by shadows, Clark, who fell to the ground, had a look of pain in his eyes. He tried desperately to stand up, but found that he had no strength at all. At the same time, at the Global Guard base, Director Cecil, Atomic Girl Eve, Guard members, as well as Mark, Loki, Boom and others, looked at Raven, who knocked down Clark, Azu and Star-Lord with shock on their faces. Especially Loki, the children of Peter, had an expression of disbelief on their faces. Several people knew how powerful Clark and Azu were. In Loki's impression, it was the first time he had seen someone who could suppress these two supermen to this extent. Raven's power after blackening is so strong. He never thought that this sister had such incredible power in her body. Although he knew that she had the 3 palace demons sealed in her body, he didn't know that Raven, who released this dark power, would easily defeat Clark and Azu. Is there no one who can stop Raven? Eve, the Atomic Girl, looked at the scene on the big screen and asked Loki with a shocked face. She didn't expect that Clark and Azu were not opponents. Did the invincible young man say that Superman and Homelander were the most powerful superheroes? I don't know, Loki took a deep breath and continued to try to contact Peter with his mobile phone. But what made him anxious was that his father's mobile phone could not be connected. Damn it, Clark, who fell to the ground, gasped hard. He held his fist against the ground and looked down at the cracked ground. Who am I? In his heart, Clark kept asking himself. I am Clark Patrick Kent. I am a farmer in Kansas, an ordinary person who grew up on Patrick's farm, and the last hope of mankind identified by the Godfather. Clark said to himself in his heart, I haven't experienced too much darkness and sadness. I am very ordinary. Like everyone else, I have been bullied by school bullies and suffered setbacks in my first love. These are things that many other people have experienced, and I have experienced them too, but the core is different. I have a powerful power that surpasses everyone, that is the belief that the Godfather brought me. Many people lose themselves because of the confusion of growing up. Maybe they are depressed, inferior, greedy and mean. Some people may not be, but they have not become what they want to be. But I, Clark Patrick Kent, am destined to be a Superman who brings hope to everyone. It was the Godfather who taught me to have the capital to strengthen the justice and kindness in my heart. It was the Godfather who taught me to dispel all confusion and strengthen this ridiculous hero dream. I am just a farm boy who is eager to help others. I am someone that many people should be, but have not become. Clark stood up with his fists while examining his heart, and his belief became extremely firm. Raven was looking at Azu, preparing to create a portal to send him away, but Clark stood up again. She looked at Clark with doubtful eyes. The next second, Clark flew towards her and slowly raised his fist. Raven, who felt that Clark's momentum was a little different, suddenly had a bad premonition in her heart. Then she felt funny again. How could I lose to Clark now? With his current strength, he is not even afraid of the Three Palaces demon. Even if the Three Palaces demon comes out, he is still confident that he can beat it back to hell. Except for his father, he is not afraid of anyone now. Raven, who is full of confidence, controls the shadow to attack Clark. Up, and away, Clark roared, flew into the air, raised his fist and hit the shadow. At this time, Clark seemed to feel that Peter was beside him and raised his fist with him. The Godfather and himself make up the present, the past and the future. We surpass, work together, and we are far beyond our imagination. Countless memories of the past emerged in his mind, and the memory of the Godfather and himself flashed in his mind. Peter and him, both of them posed in the same posture and swung their fists at the black shadows in the sky. Boom, a deafening sound rang out, and the whole space trembled. It seemed that the space was shattered by Clark's punch. The shadow attacking Clark was like a materialized crystal, which was shattered by Clark's fist. Raven could feel that it was not an ordinary punch, it seemed to be a fist that could shatter time and space. The powerful barrier built by magic was shattered by his fist in an instant. Clark's figure passed through the black shadow emitting powerful magic, and the black shadow dissipated like smoke in the roar. Then, in Raven's shocked pupils, Clark moved in front of her. Raven, who was stunned by Clark, subconsciously wanted to use space teleportation to teleport herself away. But before she could act, Clark's fist enlarged in front of her eyes until it was in front of her. The feeling of failure lingered in her heart for a moment. Raven could feel that if Clark's fist hit her, she would definitely feel bad. Even if she didn't die, she would not be able to stand up. Just when Raven thought Clark's fist was going to hit her, she didn't expect Clark's fist to suddenly stop in front of her face. The strong wind brought by the fist whistled in front of Raven's face, and her silver hair was blown whistling. Even if the fist didn't hit her, Raven still felt a palpitation. What is this? Chapter 669 Peter, what is Raven thinking about after she turns evil? At this time, Peter didn't know that his eldest daughter wanted to exile everyone. And because of the principle that villains die because they talk too much, when he was gaining the upper hand, Clark punched him and shattered his dream of dominating the farm. He now took advantage of the children's sleep and returned to Patrick's farm to get some things. Patrick's farm. The female vixen McBee in pajamas and Persephone were looking at Peter in the living room. So you came back to get these two books. McBee simply flipped through the contents of the two books. One is The Man with the Invincible Gun, which tells the story of a legendary figure, Space Knight, wandering among the stars. Space Knight has an infinite ray gun, and it is said that he can emit unparalleled energy and destroy everything that stands in his way. The other is Savage Planet, which tells the story of Omniman and his colleagues going to a planet with no grass to investigate. The gravity of this planet is huge, and even as Vitram people, They must rely on the cloak of technology. After some investigation, the two found that there were no available resources on this planet. Just as the two were about to return to their own planet, a monster suddenly appeared and tore the body of the colleague of the omnipotent man into pieces. Faced with a powerful monster, the omnipotent man, who was restricted by gravity, had no power to fight back. On the contrary, the monsters here evolved and rivaled divine power under the influence of gravity. A good science fiction novel. Peter put away the 2 books that came with Mark's spaceship. These 2 books may be useful in dealing with the Vitrum people in the world of the invincible young man, so Peter specially returned to bring these 2 books. Do you want to hear the truth? McBee blinked and asked him. Of course, the truth is that the author of this novel has no talent for writing science fiction novels at all. It's just ordinary. McBee shrugged his shoulders. Not as good as the adventure novel written by Loki about you. After hearing this, Peter looked at her in surprise. Have you read Loki's book? Of course. Although Loki wrote you as a wizard waving a magic wand, it looks like a children's novel. McBee stretched his body, and his supermodel figure was clearly visible in front of Peter. But I am still more interested in your past, Peter, such as how you picked up so many children. I believe Persephone is also very interested, right? McBee turned his eyes to Persephone. Persephone hesitated for a moment, no longer hiding her curious eyes. Yes, I am also very interested in Peter's past. No, of course not picked up. Peter immediately denied that he picked up all the children himself. They are all my biological children, Peter said to the 2 seriously. McBee came over, put his arm on Peter's shoulder, and said jokingly, who did you have the baby with? Martha McConaughey, the White Wolf Girl, Wonder Woman, Kara, or Queen Frigga, or women from other worlds? Maybe it's all possible. Peter raised his eyebrows at McBee and said, maybe it includes you, the female fox. Not now, but in the future. It may be my child in the future who was sent to the present. McBee was slightly stunned when he heard Peter's words. No, I'm not. Although McBee was not opposed to having children with Peter, she soon found a loophole. None of your children are mixed with blacks. So they can't be your and my children, nor can they be sent to the present in the future. Peter, he was just joking, but he didn't expect McBee to really consider having children with him. Ahem. I'm just joking. Okay, it's getting late. McBee, Persephone, you should go to bed early. I'm leaving first. He was worried that McBee would continue to ask him about sensitive topics about black people, so he planned to slip away. Wait, our conversation is not over yet, Peter. McBee crossed his arms and said unhappily. Peter had to put down the book in his hand. What do you want to talk to me about, McBee? A lot. After all, we haven't seen each other for several months. What's wrong with chatting for a while? Talk about your family, Peter. For example, which of your children do you like best? Zoo, Star-Lord, or Raven, or Bobo? McBee made full use of the gossip psychology of women and asked Peter this death question. I treat them all equally, Peter said righteously. I don't believe it, and Persephone doesn't believe it either. McBee said that she didn't believe Peter's rhetoric. I guess it's Zoo, right? I disagree. Persephone suddenly raised her hand. I guess it's Raven. You even made a fuss in the underworld for her, Peter. Listening to Persephone's words, Peter fell into deep thought. Although he has been trying to treat them all equally on the surface, he is not a saint. His inner feelings towards the children must be different. But after comparing them, he still couldn't find out which one he liked the most. Raven? Raven was his eldest daughter. The arrival of Raven did have a different meaning for him. Or Clark. Seeing that Peter didn't say anything, McBee asked him curiously. At the same time. Invincible Young Heroes World. Raven looked at Clark with a shocked face, with his fist stopped in front of her face. Why? Why can you do this, Clark? Raven's pupils were shocked, and she asked Clark in disbelief. It was the faith that the Godfather taught me. Clark faced Raven and slowly put down his fist. Raven, you are not the real you now. You have forgotten too many things. You have forgotten what the Godfather taught us, but I will never forget. Those memories have always been in my mind. The Godfather would listen to every trouble of mine. When I thought I was an outlier, he told me that it was okay to be unusual and that it was cool to be unusual. When I was confused about what I had done and when I fell into self-doubt, he would tell me to stick to what I thought was right. The Godfather gave me sincere emotions and gave me enough respect when I grew up. It was the Godfather who gave me the gentleness of the autumn sun, which was not dazzling or hot but warm enough, so that I knew what kind of person I could become. But you, Raven, you have completely forgotten all this now. Raven stared into Clark's eyes and was shaken for a moment. But she quickly glared at Clark. No, I am the real me now. Clark, stop preaching to me. Raven condensed shadow energy in her hands and prepared to attack Clark. Raven. The next second, she heard a familiar voice from behind, which froze her body. Are you really yourself now, Raven? Dad. After hearing Peter's voice, Raven's expression changed from anger to a sad face in an instant. Although she turned into Dark Crow, her respect for Peter did not change. She had previously scanned the area around the hotel where Peter was, and did not find any trace of her father, so she dared to attack Azu and Clark in the city. Unexpectedly, her father returned and witnessed the scene of her fighting with Clark. Raven immediately felt that she was not well. On the other side, Director Cecil of the Global Guard, Atomic Girl Eve, Loki and others breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Peter appear. Loki's heart, which had been hanging for a long time, was finally put down. Fortunately, his father did not appear until he and others were all exiled by Raven. When Bomb saw Peter appear, his mood completely improved. Very good, let Dad deal with this crazy girl, Bomb said, very unhappy. Raven, who was in the center of the battlefield, turned around and saw Peter with a stern face. Peter glanced at the messy scene, then at the embarrassed Azu and Star-Lord, and Clark standing in front of Raven. He knew without thinking that after the blackening, Raven had dealt a heavy blow to Clark and Azu. Didn't Raven follow the guards to deal with the octopus dog? Why did she become like this? Peter fell into deep confusion. In addition, he didn't feel too strange that Raven could burst out with such a powerful force. After all, in the original world line, Raven's power after blackening was incredibly powerful. In the original world line, when the Three Palaces demon came and destroyed the world, Raven left a small part of her magic to protect the Titans. After Robin and Deathstroke sneaked into the underworld to rescue the lolly version of Raven, Raven's love, confidence, friendship, anger, sadness and various emotions went out of control and burst out with real power, turning into a huge sage version of the Crow, directly destroying the Ghost Father, and then resurrecting the world. If she fully explodes, she can absorb the emotions of all mankind and even restart the world. Now that Clark, Azu and Star-Lord have not been killed, it means that his eldest daughter has not completely gone out of control. Dad, seeing the serious look Peter gave her, the queen who had been looking down on her suddenly turned into a timid lolly in front of her father. Perhaps you can explain to me, Raven, what's going on? Peter approached Raven and frowned at his daughter's silver hair. His daughter's hair was also dyed. I just want Clark and Azu to leave. Raven, in the form of blackened Raven, still told Peter what she thought. Let them leave you, Dad, don't you love me the most? Raven walked towards Peter, with an eager look in her eyes that longed for recognition. Dad, I think there will be no one else between us. Peter, is this what Raven, who has turned black, is thinking about? Chapter 670. Who is your favorite? Ruwan is very satisfied. No, that's not what you think, Raven. Peter looked into Raven's eyes. My daughter would not be so selfish. As he spoke, Peter held out his hand to him. My daughter would cry for the innocent people who died in the earthquake, and would be so upset that she couldn't eat because of the sickness of small animals. Now you have forgotten all your emotions before. You are Raven Patrick, my eldest daughter. You are not a person who is completely filled with desires. I believe you don't want to be a person driven by desires. Your brothers and sisters are your family, not your enemies. After listening to Peter's words and seeing her father's hand, Raven was stunned. She was stunned, with a trace of confusion in her eyes. Clark, Star-Lord and Azu saw that Raven's heart seemed to be moved by Peter, and looked at Peter and Raven with nervous and worried eyes. I don't know why it has become like this, Dad. I just want to be with you forever, never separate, just like this until the end of the world. No one will separate us. The dark and powerful aura emanating from Raven became softer. The arrogance and pride in her eyes also turned into helplessness and confusion. Of course no one will separate us. Peter shook his head and said to her, remember? Raven, when you were young, Hades once wanted to take you away. At that time, Dad told you that such a thing would never happen again. No one will separate us, and you will always be Dad's beloved daughter, Peter said as he took a step forward and stretched out his hand to her. Facing the blackened Raven, Peter tried to awaken her previous memories and restore his daughter to normal. Looking at Peter's outstretched hand, the confusion in Raven's eyes became a little dim. Finally, she stretched out her hand and held Peter's hand. After feeling the warmth passed on to her by her father and Peter's inner feelings for her, the black shadow in Raven's eyes gradually began to dissipate. After the blackening, Raven's emotional perception ability is very strong. She can not only perceive the emotions, memories, and dreams of the people around her, but also the emotions of the entire human beings on the earth. If she wants to perceive, it will be easy. Raven now perceives the truest emotions in Peter's heart. She read Peter's true heart at this moment. Dad loves her, and she is the one he loves the most. After knowing that she is the most beloved one, the idea of exiling Zhu and Clark and others after the blackening of Raven completely disappeared. Since she has already got the most perfect answer, there is no need to exile them. Anyway, she is the most important one in her father's heart. She actually felt sorry for Zhu and others. You guys are fighting for each other, but you don't know that you have already been the most unshakable position. With a bang, Raven threw herself into Peter's arms. Dad, I'm sorry. Raven's reason and emotions gradually recovered, and she apologized to Peter. I did something wrong. I'm sorry, Dad, let me make it up. As soon as she finished speaking, she controlled the shadow to sweep towards the ruined city. As she cast the spell, the previously destroyed city buildings began to return to their original state. The collapsed city buildings returned to their original appearance, and the wounds on the injured citizens and police began to recover. Azu and Star-Lord were shocked to find that their wounds were recovering, and their lost physical and mental strength were gradually returning to their bodies. As the shadow expanded, Atom Girl Eve, Black Samson, Loki and others in the Global Guard base also felt that their injuries were recovering. Spawn, who was already dying and in a coma, opened his eyes and looked at the familiar hall. Feeling his mental and physical strength recover, he stood up and looked at his outstretched hands in confusion. He was resurrected so quickly this time. Peter watched the surrounding buildings begin to recover under Raven's operation, and Azu and Star-Lord also began to return to normal. He looked down at his daughter in his arms with some surprise. My daughter can still do this. But this doesn't seem strange. After the blackening, Raven even has the ability to resurrect the three palaces. He remembered that once Raven turned into Arrogant Raven, possessing magic power far exceeding that of the three palaces demon and other sins, in charge of the 7 deadly sins, and not affected by magic backlash. She sold out her teammates and was treacherous. Unfortunately, she was finally destroyed by props that facilitated the development of the plot. If this form of Raven continued to exist, the Earth would probably not be able to support it. Fortunately, she did not turn into Arrogant Raven this time. Peter was wondering whether Raven would turn into Arrogant Raven in the future. After releasing her magic power to restore all the damage to Raven, she fell into his arms. Because she released all her magic power in a short period of time, she was exhausted and closed her eyes and fainted. Feeling the steady breathing of his daughter in his arms, Peter looked up at the shadows that had disappeared in the sky, and the clear night sky was restored again, and exhaled slightly. Clark, Azu and Star-Lord, after seeing Raven fainted, relaxed and walked to Peter. Holding his daughter, Peter asked the three people, John, Clark, Star-Lord, are you all right? I'm fine, Dad. Azu shrugged his shoulders. It seems that Raven has made me recover. I have to say that her ability to heal and save people has become much stronger after she turned evil. Clark looked at Peter with mixed feelings. Sure enough, the one who could suppress Raven in the end was the Godfather. If the Godfather hadn't come, I'm afraid that if he and Raven fought, one of them would definitely be killed or injured, which was what he least wanted to see. Clark lowered his head and looked at his hands. No matter how powerful the power is, it can't resist the emotional power of love? Thinking of the punch he had just thrown, Clark was more certain. The most powerful power in the world is not the Kryptonian self, nor the magic of Raven after the blackening, but the real emotional power of love. On the other side, Global Guard headquarters. Seeing Raven restore everything to its previous state, everyone was stunned. Monster Girl swallowed her saliva and asked Atomic Girl Eve in disbelief, does she use the power of magic? Probably. Eve recovered from her shock and turned her eyes away from the unconscious Raven on the big screen. She replied to Monster Girl, the invincible young man once said that Raven is a wizard with powerful magic. She cast her eyes on Peter. It turns out that there is such an incredible person among Mr. Padrick's children. Could it be that Raven is the daughter of Mr. Padrick and a wizard? Also, Mr. Padrick's children are all different. Could it be that each of them is born to him in a different woman? Eve fell into a state of wild thinking and began to count how many girlfriends Peter might have with her hands. Oh no. the invincible young man hasn't come back yet. Black Samson next to him patted his head and thought of a very important thing. Everything has returned to normal, but the exiled invincible young man has not come back yet. Hearing what Black Samson said, Eve also reacted. Yes, the invincible young man hasn't come back yet. At this time, the invincible young man who was missed by Black Samson and Eve was hesitating in the Spider-Man world. Standing in front of an apartment building, he wanted to knock on the door, but he kept hesitating. The owner of this apartment is J.J. Jameson, the owner of the Daily Bugle. He looks exactly like his father, and his way of speaking and voice are almost the same. He is the father of another world. He is very curious about the father of this world and wants to know why the other party went from being an all-powerful man to a newspaper owner. From a veteran with powerful superpowers, he became an ordinary person without any abilities. Click. Mark Grayson was hesitating when the door suddenly opened. Jameson, who was wearing pajamas and holding a cigar, was stunned when he saw Mark Grayson standing at the door. He looked at the guy who looked a bit like his son, frowned and asked, "Who are you looking for, kid?" Mark didn't expect the other party to open the door. He was slightly stunned for a moment, scratched his hair awkwardly, and said to the other party, "You are Mr. Jameson, right? I have some photos of Spider-Man here. I want to talk to you." In fact, he didn't have any photos of Spider-Man in his hand, but just made up an excuse to get away with it. Photos of Spider-Man. Jameson looked at him suspiciously. Then go to the newspaper office. Someone will give you $100 there. No, not $100, but $50. I don't know how you found my house. Now, kid, get out of here. Faced with Jameson's rude expulsion, although Mark wanted to talk to him, he had no choice but to leave. Okay, I'll leave. Mark turned around, but soon stopped, turned around and asked the other party, Mr. Jameson, do you love your son? Of course, he is my pride. Jameson's mood became much better when he mentioned his son. Even if life is so short. What? Mark quickly explained, I mean, as an ordinary person, not a superpower hero, I live an ordinary life. Well, what does it matter? Remember, kid, every moment of your life is meaningful, whether it is the life of a superpower or an ordinary person. Jameson put down the cigar, glared at him and said, okay, now get out of my house, thank you. After being scolded, Mark turned around and left in a good mood. His other father, the Almighty Man, once said to him, you will live longer than every fragile and meaningless creature on this planet. You will live to see this world collapse into dust and blow away with the wind. Everyone, and everything you know, will disappear. 500 years later, what will you have? And now the father of this world, although life is short, cherishes every minute and every second. I really hope my father can see him like this. Chapter 671 Gwen Spider, maybe we are all worried about our fathers. After leaving Jameson's apartment, Mark Grayson put on the uniform of the invincible young warrior and flew over the office buildings in the city, thinking about how to leave this other world and return to his own world. I don't know if Raven has been stopped now. I don't know how everyone in the Almighty Guard is doing. And I don't know if my mother will encounter any troubles taking care of her brother alone now. With a deep sigh, Mark Grayson took off his glasses and hood and looked at the skyline of the city in the distance. The dark sky suddenly started to rain. Mark raised his head and looked at the raindrops in the sky, and his mood became worse. Hey, invincible young warrior, just thinking about things in his own world, Mark suddenly heard a familiar crisp voice from behind. Mark turned around in surprise and saw the female Spider-Man he had met before standing behind him. Seeing Mark's true face without the hood, Gwen was stunned for a moment, and quickly waved and took a step back. Sorry, I didn't mean to see your true face. Gwen closed her eyes and said that she didn't mean to see Mark's face. Mark looked down at the mask in his hand, shrugged his shoulders, and said to her, it doesn't matter, anyway, I don't plan to live in this city for too long, and I'm not from here. Hearing Mark's words, Gwen opened her eyes and looked at him in surprise. Are you really from another parallel world? Gwen still couldn't help her curiosity and asked him. Yes, I come from another completely different world. Mark didn't continue to hide it and told Spider-Gwen his origins. I'm not a superhero in this world. Wow, it sounds incredible. Normal people who hear what you say probably think you have a little mental problem, but, Gwen paused and said to him, I believe you, because I am an abnormal person in the eyes of others. As she spoke, she took off her spider hood, revealing a head of short golden hair. Now I'll let you see my face, and we're even. Seeing that the other person's face was exactly the same as Gwen Stacy's that he met yesterday, Mark Grayson was stunned. You, how is it possible? You are Gwen Stacy? No, that's not right. When I was talking to her yesterday, you also showed up. You are two different people, but why do you look the same? Mark asked him in disbelief. It's a long story. The specific reason is that I am from a parallel universe like you. I am also Gwen Stacy, you are also from a parallel universe. Mark looked at her in amazement. What kind of luck is this? Any superhero you meet is a person from a parallel universe like you. My world is similar to this one, but in our world, Peter Parker did not become Spider-Man, but I became Spider-Man. Gwen was drenched in the drizzle and cast her eyes on the lights of the city in the distance. But Peter Parker died because of me. My father has always been concerned about Parker's death. He has been chasing the murderer, so when he found out that I was Spider-Woman, our relationship reached an irreconcilable contradiction. I didn't even dare to answer his call, so I finally escaped from that world. At this point, Gwen took a deep breath and said to Mark, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say this to you, I understand. We are like two wanderers, talking about things that we wouldn't say on weekdays. This is normal. Mark cleared the raindrops on his glasses and said to her, my father and I are also in an irreconcilable contradiction. He killed the members of the most powerful superhero organization on Earth at the time, and hoped that I would conquer the Earth like him. Hearing Mark say such explosive words, Gwen was shocked. Your father wants to conquer the Earth? He is a supervillain, almost. Mark shrugged, but I have always been an Earthling, and I will fight to protect the Earth. After hearing what Mark said, Gwen couldn't help but complain. I thought my relationship with my father was bad enough, but I didn't expect your relationship to be even worse. It seems that we are both father worried. After some communication, the relationship between the two became much more familiar. Gwen asked Mark Grayson, so, how did you come to this world? Invincible young man. Mark smiled bitterly. Raven exiled me. Raven? Who is she? The daughter of Peter Patrick. After she turned evil, she defeated all the superheroes on Earth and exiled her brothers and sisters. Although I am not her family, I was also exiled by her. After hearing what Mark said, Gwen was even more confused. Who is Peter Patrick? Why is her daughter so powerful? You look like Superman, and she can exile you. Mark joked. If we are father-worried people, Mr. Patrick is the father of father-worried people. What do you mean? I mean, he has several children, each of whom has superpowers, but each of them seems to be extraordinary. In short, Mr. Patrick is very mysterious. After hearing what Mark said, Spider-Gwen began to be interested in Peter. How is he mysterious? It's hard to describe the specific things simply, but he is indeed a legendary figure. Although he is a farmer on the surface, he has saved the world countless times behind the scenes. Mark said what he knew about Peter. What you said makes me want to meet him, Spider-Gwen said, stretching out her hand to look at her wrist. On her wrist, she wore a bracelet device that can travel through different dimensions. In the hotel, Peter stood in front of the window and looked out of the glass. The patter of light rain hit the window, and there were bursts of coldness in the air. Peter turned to his side and looked at Raven, who was sleeping on the bed. The shadow that lingered around Raven had disappeared and returned to her previous state. The only thing that had not changed back was that his daughter still had short silver hair. With silver hair, Raven's temperament became more mature. After Raven fell into coma, Peter took her to the hotel. He briefly checked and guessed that Raven should be the backlash caused by the exhaustion of magic power. According to Raven's recovery speed, she should wake up soon. Walking to his daughter's bed, Peter squatted down and held Raven's hand. Perhaps Raven in her sleep felt Peter, and her frowning brows slowly relaxed, and she whispered in a low voice, Dad, don't leave me. Peter whispered to comfort her in her sleep. No, Dad is here. Knock. 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 Peter was accompanying Raven when the door was knocked and Clark's voice sounded outside. Godfather, Loki and the others are back, and Director Cecil is here too. Responding to Clark, Peter put Raven's hand down and walked out of the room. In the hall, Chief Cecil saw Peter coming out and walked towards him quickly. Mr. Patrick, your daughter made quite a fuss this time. Cecil raised his eyebrows and said to him. Sorry, Chief Cecil, I have to take a lot of responsibility for Raven's problem. Peter did not make excuses, but admitted his problem straight away. He had learned about what happened on the Martian spaceship from Loki, who called the guards. Peter had not thought about the possibility that the octopus dog parasitism might cause Raven to lose control and turn evil. If he had not returned to the farm during this period, so many things would not have happened later. Raven, this naughty child, did not expect that her ambition after turning evil was not to rule the world, nor to release the Three Palaces demon to run rampant and destroy the world, but to expel Azu and others, and then become his only daughter. Peter was a little unsure whether to say that his daughter was simple or to complain about his daughter's courage to set a bigger goal. Cecil did not know that Peter was complaining about his daughter in his heart, and was slightly stunned when he heard Peter's answer. He didn't expect Peter to admit it so easily, and the words he prepared before were not used. After coughing, he said to Peter, "No, there was no big trouble this time. Raven also used magic to restore the buildings and healed the injured. Raven also killed the octopus dog alone. I and the members of the guard team should thank her instead." After looking around and confirming that no one noticed him, Cecil whispered to Peter, "Mr. Padrick, are you interested in staying here permanently in the future?" After seeing how Peter easily dealt with Raven, he knew that Peter was powerful and wanted Peter to stay in this world forever. Once Peter and his children stayed here, they would no longer have to worry about the Vitrum people. He believed that if the Vitrum people stayed on Earth, the blackened Raven could easily kill them. If Peter and his children joined the Global Guard, he would no longer have to worry about the safety of the Earth in the future. As for what Peter wanted, as long as it was not too excessive, he would try his best to satisfy it. "Sorry, I don't intend to stay here," Peter shook his head and said, "but Loki and the others can temporarily join the Global Guard." He planned to let Loki and the others join the Global Guard first. The threat of the Vitrum people has not been eliminated. Through fighting with these superhumans, Loki, Star-Lord, Mark and Boom can grow. This trip to the world of the invincible young hero is not a waste. I welcome it very much." Hearing Peter's words about letting Loki and the others join the Global Guard, Director Cecil smiled and thanked Peter. After talking to Cecil for a few words, Peter heard the voice of Raven in the room and knew that his daughter had woken up. He greeted Cecil and entered the room. Chapter 672, Raven's Confession. In the slightly dim room, the only light source was the few rays of moonlight that came through the gaps in the curtains. Raven slowly opened her eyes. There was still a trace of darkness in her pupils, but it was no longer as deep and terrifying as before. After sitting up, Raven found herself lying on a bed, covered with the familiar windbreaker of her father. "Are you awake, Raven?" Peter walked towards Raven, who had just woken up, and looked at her with concerned eyes. "Dad." Raven stroked her aching forehead and looked at Peter. "How long have I slept, Dad?" "Just a little while." Peter walked to her side and said to her, "You made quite a commotion this time. I suspect that if I don't come again, my daughter will even tear down this city." Raven's eyes met Peter's, and her expression became complicated, with a hint of guilt and confusion. "Dad," her voice was a little hoarse, what did I do?" Peter approached her and sat on the chair beside the bed. "Don't you remember, Raven?" Raven lowered her head and grasped the bedsheet tightly with both hands, her knuckles turned white from the force. "I only remember the darkness, endless darkness. It swallowed me and controlled me. I hurt everyone, right, Dad?" Raven's voice was weak and trembling, her hands grasped the bedsheet tightly, her knuckles turned white from the force. I'm sorry." Peter was silent for a moment, then slowly reached out his hand and gently stroked her forehead. "Raven, my child, you don't have to apologize." Peter's voice was low and gentle. "But I almost lost control and hurt John and the others, and almost hurt you." Tears flashed in Raven's eyes, and her voice was full of self-blame and fear. "I didn't want to do that. I was just afraid of losing you again." Peter didn't expect Raven to be completely immersed in self-blame after waking up. He whispered to comfort her, "No, you won't lose me, Raven. No matter what happens, I'm here." But Raven's voice became a little choked. "The power in my body. It's too strong. I can't control it. I'm afraid it will control me again." Peter organized his words and held her hand tightly. "Raven, you are much stronger than you think. You have a strong power in your body, but you also have your own will. You can control it instead of being controlled by it. This time you controlled it, didn't you? You were awakened when you saw me for the last time." Although he said so, Peter suspected that Clark's punch shattered many of Raven's dreams of dominating the farm. Raven didn't know Peter, and was thinking about Clark's punch that shattered her dream of a farm. After listening to Peter's words, she took a deep breath, as if she was gathering courage. and then slowly stood up and walked to her father. Raven's eyes never left Peter's eyes, as if she was afraid that he would disappear in the blink of an eye. "Dad, I've always wanted to tell you something." Raven's voice became softer and softer, almost like a whisper, but full of unconcealable emotions. Peter did not urge her, but just stared at her quietly, waiting for her to continue. I love you, Dad." Raven's voice finally became firmer, but her fingers tightly grasped the corner of her clothes, as if these words had exhausted all her courage. "I know that the power in my body makes me dangerous. I may lose control and hurt you. But I really don't want to lose you, Dad. You are the most important person to me and my only support. I can't imagine what the world would be like without you." Her voice began to tremble, and tears welled up in her eyes, but she still insisted on finishing. "Dad, I know you are strong and you can do anything. But I also know that you also have weak moments. I don't want you to get hurt because of me, I don't want you to suffer because of me, but I'm really afraid that one day you will leave me, afraid that you will give up on me because of the power in my body." Peter's eyes flickered slightly, his expression was still calm, but there was a hint of imperceptible tenderness in his eyes. He slowly reached out his hand and gently stroked her hair, his movements were gentle and full of love. "Raven," Peter's voice was low and firm, "you don't have to be afraid. You are my daughter, my blood, my pride. No matter how strong the power in your body is, no matter what challenges you face, I will never leave you." Raven's tears finally burst out. She threw herself into Peter's arms, hugged him tightly, as if to pour all her fear and dependence into this hug. "Dad, I don't want to lose you, never." After this dark transformation, Raven found that her feelings for her father were even hotter than she thought. She realized her inner self, and what she feared most was that Peter would give up on her. Peter gently stroked her back and said to his daughter softly, "I know, Raven, I love you too. No matter what happens, I will be by your side, protect you, support you, and you will never lose me, Dad." Raven whispered softly, with endless dependence in her voice, "Thank you. Thank you for always being by my side." Peter did not answer, but hugged his daughter tighter. The father and daughter were affectionate for a while, and soon Peter remembered an important thing, that is, where did Raven send the invincible young man? "Raven, where did you send Mark?" Peter asked Raven in his arms. Raven's body stiffened, and she raised her head awkwardly and said to Peter carefully, "Actually, I don't know which world he was sent to. I just opened a portal at random." "Peter, the invincible young man can't come back, isn't it over?" The next day, Mark encountered a very embarrassing thing. Originally, he wanted to go to the cafe to buy a cup of coffee for Tom, but he met the invincible young man's girlfriend. "Mark!" The invincible young man's girlfriend Amber shouted in surprise when she saw Mark. Amber has dark brown skin, glowing with a healthy luster in the sun, and her carefully groomed curly hair is tied into a fluffy high ponytail. She exclaimed in surprise, showing her white teeth, "You said you went to deal with the octopus dog last night. I didn't receive your text message and thought something happened to you. Are you okay?" Seeing that Amber mistook him for the invincible young man, Mark froze in place. Amber walked towards her, and the golden hoop earrings on her earlobes sparkled. "I kept calling your cell phone last night, but it didn't go through." As she said this, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. The Mark in front of her seemed different from her boyfriend. "Wait. Mark, this is not some kind of disguise of yours, right, Mom? I think you have recognized the wrong person." Mark took a step back and explained to the other party, But soon he stopped talking. Because opposite Mark, a pair of hands were placed on Amber's neck. A black-haired woman in a white and blue uniform stood behind Amber and stared at Mark. "Mark Grayson, Invincible Knight, now, follow me immediately." Feeling the powerful aura of the woman behind her, Amber looked at Mark with a trembling voice. "Mark," the heroic short-haired woman strangled Amber's neck with her hands, "did you hear me? If you don't do it, this woman will die." Mark looked at the woman in astonishment, and then looked at Amber with a terrified face. "Wow, hey, who are you? Don't get excited, maybe we can have a good talk." Mark tried to comfort the other party. "My name is Anissa, an agent of the Vitram Empire. If you think you can come to me and stop me before I break this woman's neck, you can try. You are welcome to try." Mark's expression became serious. "What do you want?" Since the other party regarded him as the Invincible Knight, he would not deliberately explain. The most urgent task now is to ensure the safety of the Invincible Knight's girlfriend, who was strangled by her throat. Anissa said to him coldly, Let's talk to you. Let's go to a place where we can talk alone, okay? If you leave immediately and don't hurt her or anyone else, I will leave here with you." Anissa looked into Mark's eyes and nodded, saying, "Then hurry up, otherwise everyone here will die, and she will be the first." Releasing the hand that was pinching Amber's neck, Anissa stomped her feet on the ground with a little force, and flew into the sky with a bang. Amber, who survived the disaster, could no longer control her emotions, and rushed to Mark with tears. She was panting and even had difficulty breathing. Although Mark was a little embarrassed, he couldn't push her away, so he had to imitate Peter and pat Amber's shoulder gently. "It's okay, it's okay." After leaving the coffee shop, Mark immediately used the communicator that the guards had just given him to contact Director Cecil. Then he looked at the woman who claimed to be a Weaksing agent standing in the sky in the distance, took a deep breath, and walked towards her. Standing in midair, the woman with her hands behind her back looked at Mark flying over. At this time, Mark had not yet awakened his Vishan bloodline, and the flying method he used was the floating flying technique in the spell. Mark flew in front of her and asked cautiously, "What do you want to talk about?" At the same time, at the Global Guard headquarters, Director Cecil and Loki, Tom, Boom and Wei stood in front of the big screen, watching the conversation between the two. Cecil used the headset to say to Mark, "Mark, help me collect as much information as possible about her. We are doing our best to prevent things from getting worse, and we have already notified Mr. Patrick. Your current task is to delay as much time as possible and let her talk more." Mark in the air listened to what Director Cecil said, and cast his eyes on Asani. "What do you want to do?" Chapter 673, The Gryffindor Heroes Being Beaten. We have studied this planet. In the next 2 centuries, human civilization has less than 18% chance of survival, and billions of lives must be lost. Mark stared at her and asked unhappily, "Is this a threat?" Anissa said with an unchanged expression, "No, this is a fact. The strong in this world destroy their own homes and deprive them of resources for their own selfish interests. Soon large areas of this planet will be uninhabitable because of human greed." After hearing this, Mark was stunned for a moment and said, "Yes, I know, you know? Why do you know that, but you are here with your fists clenched, trying to stop me instead of stopping them?" Mark didn't know how to refute the other party. He was not the real invincible young hero, but at this moment he took on the role of the invincible young hero. Hesitant for a moment, he said to the other party, "It's complicated." "No, it's not complicated. We have the technology. We can repair the Earth's climate, feed the hungry, and punish criminals. We save more lives in a year than you do in a year. You have failed this planet and the people on it. Can't you see that?" Mark clenched his fists. "At least I don't kill people." Anissa shook her head, "But every day you resist the rule of the Vitrum people, thousands of people will die, or those people's lives are not important to you." Global Guard. The technicians have scanned Anissa's body surface. According to the simulation results of the bone and muscle density scans, if the real invincible young hero fights her, there is less than an 8% chance of survival. If Mark in this parallel world fights her now, there should be less than a 2% chance of survival. Director Cecil folded his hands in front of his chest. "That's really good news." Bao and Wei looked at this scene, and both of them showed worried expressions on their faces. The 2 sisters on the farm have the best relationship with Mark, and the 3 of them have traveled together in Zoan. "Let me go." Wei raised her head and said to Director Cecil with a firm expression, "I will go to help Mark." Bao also followed Wei and said, "I will go with Wei, otherwise they will definitely be dealt with by the Vitrum people." Bao thought that he was the smartest person among the children of his father on the farm, while Mark and Wei were the dumbest. If these 2 people acted together, they would probably be easily dealt with by this so-called Vitrum spy. Cecil hesitated for a moment and was about to speak when his subordinates reported to him, "Satellite monitoring has detected a supersized octopus monster in the South Pacific, which is rapidly approaching a passenger ship." "Shit," Cecil cursed inwardly. He looked up and saw Anissa on the screen saying, "The Vitrum people do not enjoy killing, although killing sometimes brings us pleasure. Dead humans are of no benefit to us." Seeing this, he immediately had an idea. He used the communication device to say to Mark, "Then let's see if she is serious. Thousands of kilometers southwest, there is a cruise ship about to be swallowed. Ask her if she is willing to help save the cruise ship." Listening to Cecil's words, Mark nodded and said to Anissa, "Listen, there is a ship in danger. If what you said just now is true, you will go with me to save people, right?" Anissa smiled, "I will follow you." Let me see how strong Nolan's son is, Mark. He doesn't have any superpowers at all. If she really sees it, it will be exposed. But he can't care so much. He was just pretending to be Mark. At most, he can make it clear to her when the time comes. You will save those people, right? Mark asked the other party. You said you don't enjoy killing. Let's go to the scene first. With a whoosh, Anissa flew quickly to the southwest. Helpless Mark could only keep up with the other party. The endless blue sea was covered with dark clouds, and the strong wind rolled up huge waves, hitting the hull of the luxury cruise ship. The passenger ship was bumping on the turbulent sea, and the passengers screamed in fear, holding on to the railings and seats tightly. In the cracked sea surface, a huge sea monster with multiple tentacles emerged from the deep sea. The slimy and terrifying tentacles wrapped around the hull like a giant python, making a deafening roar. The passenger ship was rolled out by the tentacles, making a tooth-grinding metal-cracking sound, and the passengers who were hit by the swept sea water screamed and hit the railing. At this critical moment, Mark arrived at the scene. Holding a magic wand, Mark strode towards the bow against the strong wind. Everyone back off, Mark shouted loudly, and his voice penetrated the storm. The passengers retreated one after another, and under Mark's protection, they quickly moved away from the attacking sea monster. The sea monster seemed to have sensed Mark's threat, and a huge tentacle suddenly attacked him. Mark reacted quickly and waved his magic wand and shouted, God's edge without shadow. A silver light flashed, and the tentacle attacking Mark was cut off, and the sea monster let out a painful roar. However, the sea monster did not retreat, but became even more violent after being attacked. The eyes of the huge sea monster flashed with fierce light, and more tentacles stretched out from the sea, trying to drag the entire ship into the abyss. Expecto Patronus, Mark continued to chant in a low voice, and under the burst of strong emotional power, the silver-white magic energy condensed into a tall horse. The horse roared and rushed towards the huge sea monster in the gorgeous magic energy. The dazzling silver-white light illuminated the entire sea area. The sea monster was shocked by this powerful magic and its movement slowed down. On the other side, Anissa, standing in the air, looked at Mark who released magic instead of directly attacking the sea monster with superpower, and fell into shock. Isn't this the invincible young man in my cognition? No, he is not the invincible young man. Roar, the sea monster, which was constantly attacked by Mark, roared and swung its tentacles at Mark. Seeing that Mark was unable to deal with the sea monster, Anissa, with her hands on her chest, activated her super speed and rushed towards the sea monster. Boom! Anissa instantly knocked a big hole in the indestructible skin of the sea monster. Blood and flesh burst out immediately. The next second, Anissa came out from the other side of the huge sea monster's body. She directly used her body to crash through the heart of the sea monster. The sea monster let out a wail, fell down, and hit the sea surface heavily, causing a huge wave. Anissa, covered in blood, looked at Mark, flew under the luxury cruise ship, lifted the ship with one hand, and flew forward. Mark was stunned for a moment, and hurried to catch up with the other party. After flying for a few kilometers, Anissa put the 10,000-ton ship on a nearby island. You are not the invincible young man, right? After doing all this, Anissa asked Mark with a somewhat ugly expression. You never asked me if I was the invincible knight, then who are you? Mark took a breath and said to her, I am Mark Padrick, the son of Peter Padrick. I am Mark Grayson from another parallel world. You can call me the Gryffindor Knight, it's you. It was you who defeated our Imperial soldiers on the planet Sexa. Hearing Mark say that he was the son of Padrick, Anissa showed a shocked expression on her face. Yes, it's me, okay, I made a mistake at the beginning. Where is your father? Let me talk to him. The shocked expression on Anissa's face quickly disappeared. Controlling her expression, she asked Mark to meet Peter. Why do you want to see my father? You are not qualified to talk to me, Mark, only your father is worthy, Anissa said to him coldly. Your father tried to interfere in the affairs of this world. This was a wrong decision for him. He could not change anything, and he did not know the true strength of the Vitrum people. After a pause, she cast her gaze on the passenger ship she had placed on the shore. Nolan on the planet Sexa has been taken away by us, and the fate of the Earth has been determined. He does not have to get involved in our affairs. Also, I can feel, Mark, that you are also a Vitrum, and you should take the same path as us. No. Hearing the other party say that he was a Vitrum, Mark immediately retorted angrily, I am not a Vitrum, I am my father's son, I am a Smalwul. You will never understand the people of Earth. Maybe human nature is not perfect, Maybe we often get into trouble, but we must make our own decisions, even if sometimes they are wrong. My father told me never to make decisions for others." Listening to Mark's words, Anissa clenched her fists. "I've explained the truth to you, debated with you, and saved so many people, but you still can't see the truth." Mark shook his head and pointed his wand at her. "I think you should leave." Seeing Mark pointing his wand at herself, Anissa shook her head in disappointment. "Don't forget, we were very rational at the beginning." With a bang sound of air explosion, Anissa rushed to Mark in an instant. Bang! Before releasing the magic, Mark, who was hit hard on the chin, was directly hit into the sky. Feeling a burst of pain, Mark directly broke through the clouds and rushed into the sky. He wiped the corner of his mouth and found that he was covered in blood. Before he could fight back, Anissa flew above him in the next second. She punched him in the head with one hand. Bang! Mark was directly blasted into the sea surface and landed heavily in it, creating huge waves. Mark, who was knocked down by 2 punches, fell on the beach, and blood kept flowing from the corner of his mouth. The severe pain all over his body made his consciousness begin to blur. Although he tried desperately to stand up, he had no strength at all. No, I can't fall down. I made a promise with my father that I will protect him," Mark murmured. In his blurred vision, he seemed to see Peter's figure walking towards him on the beach. Chapter 674, Stubborn Mark. Patrick would never tell even if beaten to death. "Dad." Mark raised his head and looked in the direction where Peter was coming with blurry vision. It turned out that it was just his illusion. His father did not come towards him, only the fishy and salty sea breeze was blowing on him. "No, I can't. I can't fall here." Mark staggered to his feet with blood in his mouth. Seeing that Mark could still stand up, Anissa was slightly surprised. With such a serious injury, could he still stand up? Bang! Anissa flew over in an instant and attacked Mark. God of Swords, Mark reacted, raised his magic wand, and a beam of magic energy hit Anissa. Anissa moved faster and hit Mark's abdomen, knocking him several meters away and falling heavily on the soft beach. The sea water slapped Mark mercilessly, flooding his body again and again. Isani walked in front of him, raised his foot in metal combat boots, and stepped on Mark's chest. "You are from Vitram, but it seems that Peter Patrick did not teach you like a warrior," Anissa sneered. "It seems that Patrick, who has a false reputation, does not know how to teach his children to be a warrior." "Shut up. You are not allowed to insult my father." Mark gritted his teeth and tried desperately to resist, but no matter how he struggled, he could not get rid of Anissa's trampling. With a bang, Anissa hit Mark's chest again and knocked him into the sea. A deafening sound rang out, and Mark's body fell into the sea, splashing huge waves. Mark, who fell on the bottom of the sea, felt uncontrollable pain all over his body while being soaked by the sea water. Consciousness began to become gradually blurred. In a trance, bits of memories of his previous interactions with his father came up. He heard a familiar voice mixed in with the chaotic and noisy sounds on the bottom of the sea. It was the blues melody hummed by his father when he was repairing the car. "No, Dad, I can't fall down now. I promised you." Mark opened his eyes and suddenly felt full of strength, and the previous fatigue was swept away. He remembered this feeling. At that time in the Marvel world, in order to defeat Thanos, his father used the time stone to pull himself into the long river of time in the future. He grew up to be a young man, possessed powerful strength, and defeated Thanos together with Clark. Mark, who was at the bottom of the sea, looked at his hands in disbelief. He actually had the power at that time. Above the sky, Anissa was looking at the sea. With a bang, the next second, Mark suddenly burst out of the water. In the huge waves, Mark raised his fist and rushed towards Anissa. Anissa, with a fixed look in his eyes, did not expect Mark to suddenly awaken his power. Mark flew over at high speed and roared and punched Anissa. With a bang, Anissa, who was hit hard by Mark's chin, rolled in the air and rushed backwards. Mark, who was in pursuit of victory, punched at the opponent like lightning. Anissa, who stabilized her body in the air, dodged Mark's fists continuously, and finally held Mark's fist with one hand. "It's amazing. You actually awakened your power, Mark from another parallel world. Very good, you have an excellent warrior talent. As long as you get rid of your father's control, join us, and accept our education well, you can get supreme honor." Facing the opponent's persuasion to surrender, Mark replied unceremoniously, "I have never been a good student. I belong to Patrick Farm, and my education belongs to Hogwarts." Breaking free from Anissa's control, Mark gritted his teeth and punched her. As a result, he was hit in the chest by Anissa and fell heavily to the sea. Boom. 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 Mark slid out on the sea like a water float, then bounced up and fell heavily, and finally boomed into the passenger ship on the beach. The passengers of the rescued cruise ship were stunned when they saw Mark being smashed into the cruise ship, making a deafening sound and countless glass bursting out. Inside the cruise ship, Mark, who was in great pain, staggered to his feet. With a loud bang, Anissa flew into the ship. A lightning-like fist smashed down with a sound of breaking through the air. Mark barely turned his head to avoid it, and the fist grazed his cheek and smashed a deep hole in the cabin bulkhead. "Is this all you can do, Mark?" Anissa warrior sneered and kicked Mark in the abdomen. Mark crossed his hands to block, but was still kicked and slid several meters away, plowing a deep groove on the floor of the cruise ship. He felt his arms numb and his chest heaving violently. Although he had awakened the superpowers of the Vitrum people, he was like an ordinary person facing a beast at this moment. Anissa did not give him a chance to breathe, and rushed forward in one step, and his fist fell like lightning. Mark dodged a few punches, but a heavy blow still hit his ribs. With a dull bang sound, the severe pain made his eyes go black. Gritting his teeth and enduring the pain, Mark reached forward and grabbed Anissa's hands. Anissa exerted force suddenly and twisted Mark's arms behind his back. Mark felt the pain and hit Anissa's temple with his other elbow. Anissa ducked her head and threw Mark to the ground with an over-the-shoulder throw. "It's obvious that you are not my opponent now. As long as you agree to my conditions, break off your relationship with your father, enter the Vitrum Empire, and become a part of the Empire," Anissa said to her coldly. "This is your only choice." Mark, who fell to the ground, stood up again like an immortal cockroach. His face was covered with blood, his head was dizzy, and he couldn't even stand. The Global Guard base, Director Cecil, Loki, Bomb and Wei, Tom, Eve, and the members of the Global Guard couldn't bear to watch any longer. Especially Wei, regardless of Cecil's obstruction, rushed to where Mark was. Bao was worried about Wei's safety, so he hurried after them. Tom looked at Mark, whose face was covered in blood after being beaten, and his expression, which had always been calm, also changed slightly. Cecil frowned and asked his assistant, "Didn't you contact Patrick?" The assistant replied, "Mr. Patrick said he has already rushed over." Cecil breathed a sigh of relief after getting this answer. Fortunately, as long as Peter rushed over, the problem should be solved smoothly. Otherwise, he would have to send an aircraft carrier battle group over. Holding the communicator tightly in his hand, Director Cecil said to Mark, "Mark, I heard from you that your father will be there soon. You just have to hold on. Promise her that you will break away from your father's control, choose to become a Vitrum, accept their education and then take over this planet. Son, you can't beat her, so trick her to leave first, and then we will prepare together to welcome these scumbags." Listening to Director Cecil's words, Mark wiped the blood from his nose. With eyes blurred by blood, he looked at Anissa standing in front of him, holding her hands in front of her chest and staring at him coldly. Everyone in front of the screen also looked at Mark nervously. No, what everyone didn't expect was that Mark uttered a word that no one had expected. Director Cecil put down the communicator and stared at this superhero who was not the invincible young hero, but like the invincible young hero, he would never compromise and stick to his own ideas. "Child," Director Cecil lowered his head and murmured in a low voice. Mark struggled to stand up, rejected Director Cecil's proposal, and suddenly punched Anissa. After Anissa dodged, she counterattacked and attacked Mark. This punch came with a sound of breaking through the air and hit Mark's chest. Mark was hit into the air, was knocked out of the passenger ship, and fell heavily on the beach. The next punch from Anissa, who flew to the beach, came. But this time, Mark caught it with both hands. What? Anissa was surprised to find that her fist could not move forward any further. Taking this opportunity to grab the opponent's wrist, Mark turned around and hit Anissa's chest with his elbow. Mark, who had exhausted all his strength, finally hit the opponent hard. Anissa staggered back in disbelief. But she quickly stabilized her body and swept a whip kick to Mark's waist. Mark quickly squatted to avoid the kick, and at the same time attacked the opponent's lower body with his right leg. Anissa jumped up to avoid it and hit Mark's chin with an uppercut. Mark was beaten back a few steps, spit out a mouthful of blood, and fell to the ground with a thump. This time, Mark finally didn't have the strength to stand up. On the beach, the rescued passengers looked at Mark, who was lying on the ground in shock, disbelief, or sadness. Anissa looked at Mark with a slight panting breath. Her mood now became complicated. Although as a weak-sing person, it was her responsibility to deal with Mark. But watching the other party fall down and stand up again and again, she became hesitant to do it. And she heard the conversation between Mark and Cecil, and knew that Mark could have deceived her by begging for mercy, but he just refused. Shaking her head, she forced herself to get rid of these inappropriate thoughts, walked in front of Mark, stretched out her foot, and stepped on Mark's chest. "This is your last chance." At the Global Guard base, Cecil was still trying. "Mark, promise her." "Say those words quickly." "No." Being stepped on by Anissa, Mark endured the pain and squeezed out this word from his mouth. "No matter what." "When?" "I will never say that sentence." "Dad, no matter when, I will never betray him, even if it is a lie." Hearing Mark's voice, Anissa's heart was slightly shaken. The force she stepped on Mark's chest gradually decreased. The next second, something changed suddenly. With a bang, a thunderbolt hit. Anissa, who was unable to react in time, was hit hard by the thunderbolt and plowed out on the ground along the beach. "Dad, Dad," Mark saw Peter in his blurred vision. This time it was not an illusion, but his real father. Chapter 675 Mark, "Dad, did I disappoint you?" Anissa fell into the sea like a meteorite, and the splashing seawater was like a small tsunami. She was drowsy in the seawater. Just as she stood up from the drowsiness, she was hit in the face by Peter and flew backwards before she could react. This punch, with Peter's anger, directly knocked the other party into the sea. "It seems that you don't know who you have provoked." Peter's voice was low and dangerous, like an angry lion. He didn't expect his son to be beaten so badly. Although in the original world line, the invincible young man was beaten up every time, and then resurrected with full blood. And every time he was resurrected, he became stronger like a Saiyan. He didn't expect Mark to suffer this fate and be beaten with blood all over his face. Looking at the culprit of everything, Peter's expression became a little ugly. It seems that if he doesn't show his power, these people will treat him as a sick cat. Anissa stood up from the sea and shook the water drops on her head. "Who are you?" Anissa panted slightly and looked at Peter vigilantly. She didn't expect that someone's fist was heavier than hers. The punch just now made her feel a sharp pain. She reached out her hand to touch her nose and was shocked to find that she was bleeding from the nose. How could it be possible? Anissa looked at the blood in her hand in disbelief. This was the first time she had a nosebleed. "I am the Peter Patrick you were looking for," Peter said to her coldly. "Did you feel good when you beat my son just now? Next, let me experience the same feeling as you." As soon as Peter finished speaking, he activated his super speed and moved in front of Anissa in an instant. The fist made a sound of breaking through the air and went straight to the opponent's face. Anissa dodged sideways in shock and swept Peter's waist with a whip kick. Peter did not dodge and took the kick forcefully. At the same time, he grabbed the opponent's ankle and swung it to the ground. Bang! A big hole was smashed into the beach, and Anissa groaned in pain. Enduring the pain, she quickly fought back. With her hands on the ground, Anissa stood up with a somersault, and at the same time, she threw an uppercut with a sonic boom that pierced the air, hitting Peter's chin. Peter leaned back to avoid it, grabbed the opponent's arm, and threw him over his shoulder and slammed him into the beach again. Anissa fell on the beach with her back on, gasping for air. "You are too weak, Vitram people. If everyone on your planet is like you, do you still want to rule the Earth and even the entire universe?" Hearing Peter's ridicule, Anissa stood up in anger. She didn't expect Peter's strength to be so strong. In the past, she only felt such a strong power from Admiral Craig. What? Lack of confidence? Anissa, or are you already filled with fear? Peter continued to sneer at her. Huh? Anissa roared and hit Peter fiercely. Bang! Peter's fist came with a sonic boom. Anissa dodged sideways, but Peter's knee strike followed. The blow hit Anissa's ribs so hard that she felt her internal organs vibrate. Too slow, Peter's voice exploded in her ears. Then Peter's elbow came from above and Anissa barely blocked it, but the huge impact force instantly broke the ground under her feet. With a dull bang, Peter hit Anissa's chin with an uppercut. The fist collided with a bone with a dull sound, and Anissa's head suddenly tilted back, and the whole person flew out like a baseball flying straight. Anissa was hit by this blow and flew out horizontally, crashing through the passenger ship, and was blasted to the sea surface before stopping. She fell into the sea and splashed huge waves, making a deafening sound. Is that all you have? Peter was suspended in the air, looking down at the other person who fell into the sea, and said in a cold voice, It seems that you are not as strong as you described, Vitram." After being humiliated by Peter again and again, Anissa was no longer calm and noble as before, and rushed towards Peter with a roar. The fists of the two collided in the air, and the shock wave shattered all the glass of the surrounding passenger ships. Anissa felt her arm numb for a while, but she immediately changed her moves and grabbed Peter's throat with her left hand. Peter turned his head to avoid it, grabbed her wrist, and threw her to the ground again with an over-the-shoulder throw. Anissa adjusted her posture in midair, stepped heavily on the ground with both feet, and the ground within a radius of 100 meters collapsed instantly. "This is more like it," Peter couldn't help but say when he saw the other party suddenly explode. Then Peter suddenly accelerated, so fast that he could hardly see his figure. Anissa only had time to raise her arms, and felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Bang! Peter seized a flaw in Anissa and hit her abdomen with a heavy punch. Anissa groaned and curled up slightly. Then Peter released a divine power from his right hand. With a boom, the silver energy rushed out and hit the curled Anissa hard. Anissa was knocked back and fell heavily to the ground, shaking the ground. Anissa, who was unable to stand up, gasped in embarrassment. She could feel that several of her ribs were broken. Blood kept flowing from the corners of her mouth, and she was in great pain. She fell to the ground and looked at Peter, who was walking towards her unwillingly. In any case, she did not expect Peter's power to be so strong. "Who are you?" Anissa asked Peter while panting hard. "I am an ordinary person, an ordinary Smallville farmer. Now, the game is over." Peter looked at her coldly and said to her, "Remember, in your next life, don't mess with children with fathers." At the same time, at the Global Guard base, everyone was completely numb watching this scene. Anissa, who had a 92% chance of winning against the invincible young hero, was completely finished like this. This Vitram man was completely powerless in front of Peter. The power that Peter Padrick exploded in anger was so terrifying. Atomic Girl Eve looked at Peter on the screen, her mouth slightly open, and the whole person fell into an unbelievable state. At first it was the blackened Raven, and now it was Peter who exploded in anger. Is the daily life of Mr. Padrick's family so exciting? Mark slowly stood up on the beach and saw that his father was about to end Anissa completely, so he stopped him. "No, Dad." Peter looked at Mark after hearing the voice. "Don't kill her, Dad. From the beginning, she never thought of killing me. I can feel that she has no intention of killing, and she doesn't really want to kill me. She is just a messenger." Although Mark was very moved that his father beat the other party to vent his anger for him, he didn't want Anissa to die in his father's hands. Peter sighed and said to him, "Your excessive kindness will not make others grateful to you, Mark. I know, I'm not doing this for others' gratitude. I just don't want you, Dad, to be angry and kill someone who shouldn't die because of me." Mark covered his chest and said to Peter with an earnest expression. Seeing Mark's pleading eyes, Peter didn't do it in the end. He said to Anissa, who was stunned on the ground, "Leave the Earth, go back and tell your people that as long as I'm on the Earth, you can't touch the Earth, otherwise I will turn your planet into dust." After listening to Peter's words, Anissa didn't refute. She staggered to her feet, looked at Mark with a complicated expression, and used all her strength to fly into the sky with a boom. After Anissa left, Peter walked towards Mark. "Dad, did I disappoint you?" Mark asked weakly. Peter shook his head. "No, Mark, you make me proud. You didn't back down in the face of a strong enemy, and you kept fighting even when you were injured." He paused and gently stroked Mark's hair. "You are much stronger than I was back then." Mark coughed a few times after hearing Peter's comfort. Peter supported him and began to construct the rune of rune healing. "I'll help you heal. I'm fine, Dad," Mark whispered. "Just a few broken ribs?" Peter glared at him. "Just a few ribs? You're really out of breath when you say you're fat." While treating Mark, Peter checked Mark's body. Although this kid was beaten by Anissa, he awakened the power of the Vitram people. In the original world line, Mark would not awaken his power until he was 17 years old and become a superhero who can stand on his own. Unexpectedly, Mark has awakened his superpowers now. It seems that this time it is a blessing in disguise. She is very powerful, Dad. If she starts to attack the humans on Earth, I am not sure if I can stop her. Although I have awakened my power is still very weak, Mark said with a frustrated mood. "Dad, if it weren't for you, I might have really failed." "We will always grow up." Peter patted Mark on the shoulder and looked at the clouds above his head. "You did a good job this time. No one can reach the sky in one step." Boom. After the humiliated and seriously injured Anissa flew into the air, She broke through the clouds and flew directly into the universe. In the universe far away from the Earth, a spaceship of the Weaksing people stopped here. The uniform was tattered and the embarrassed Anissa walked to the control room of the spaceship. In the control room, a man with his hands behind his back was observing the virtual screen in front of him. "How is it, Anissa?" The man turned around and asked her with a serious expression. The man in the silver uniform was about 6 feet 2 inches tall, with broad shoulders and a well-proportioned figure. Even though he was over 50, he still maintained the upright posture of a soldier. The small mustache on his mouth and the mechanical prosthetic eye in his right eye make him look even more mysterious and solemn. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.